change the beat. The sky is not the same no more today. There is no turning back. already back to back. Death comes running on a midnight train. Back to back. Conscience is slipping to the air. Back to back. Cannot let anyone do it again. Back to back. I can no longer pretend. Give me a break, you down. Just wanna get by my dad's again. Lazy down. What a heavy day. Now you hear the rumble from the ground, yeah. Trick, cheat, frog like clowns dancing round, yeah. So let it be, oh let it be, since I'm the traitor. 6 times knocking on the door, while a chance of God to send them back to back. Death comes running on a midnight train. Back to back. Conscience is ripping to the air. Back to back. Cannot let anyone do it again. Back to back. I can no longer pretend. Give me a break, you down. Just wanna get by my chest again. Lazy down. What a heavy day. down to rock, get up to burn, stand with the pride and burn for your desire. One day I noticed that my life was broken. It was not me who was controlling this body. Oh, I want to know what's really.
All right, hello everyone. So let's see. There's not much to do in the game. I'm still not maxed on anything. What else we got? We got an update coming in soon. I've been checking out a couple of videos from Zeomantic, which I just met through one of the streams. Oops. One of the streams for I think it was Aeon, and I seen him on Thrift Shop stream. And I didn't notice that I was already subscribed to him on my other account. I stumbled upon his videos a while ago. I was going through a phase where I was like, oh, let me get lured up on all this PSO stuff because it's nostalgic for me, right? And I was like, oh shit, this guy's here on the stream. Let me check out his stuff again because I don't remember. It's been quite a while. So I thought it would be a cool idea. That would be pretty neat if I just, while I'm doing some random, normal daily shit, I would listen to a couple of his videos, obviously with his permission. So I hit him up on Twitter and he said, yeah, go ahead, man. It's cool. I just told him I wanted to just chill, farm, and do some of the normal shit while listening to his stuff, maybe reacting to it, see if I can learn something, understand what all this craziness is. I went through half of the first of PSO 1, I think, of his lore, I think a year ago. I want to say a year ago. I just don't remember it that well. I was playing it while I was working out, so obviously I was not paying full attention. I had to rewind a couple of things. But yeah, so I figured that would be something nice to do. Obviously, shout outs to Zeo for letting me use his videos. Obviously, subscribe to him if you're into just PSO in general, or if you just want to listen to some lore. If you're one of those people who just like listen to some lore and chill. I'm one of those people. I really like enjoying listening to stories of certain franchises or sagas or recaps and stuff like that. I do that with comics too. I do that with some series if I don't have the time to get into watching a whole show or something, I'll just listen to a summary and someone's take, as long as I not that I necessarily agree with them, but as long as they're able to describe their position into why they like it. Because I can not like something, right? But I can like how someone explains why they like it, which I find interesting. So yeah, we're gonna do that right now. Let's go ahead and queue up his playlist, and we'll be listening to it. They're usually pretty short clips. I'll just have it playing on the playlist, and if I find something interesting or if I miss something, I'll just go ahead and rewind it and go on from there.
Welcome to the first in a series on the lore. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first in a series on the lore of.
All right, I hope the volume is good here.
2.
Always be quiet.
My name is Zeo, and I'll be your lore keeper. You may think that PSO2 is all about murdering a massive melange of monsters and looking absolutely fabulous while doing it, and you're not entirely wrong. Here we aim to explore the backdrop for these adventures and the entities inhabiting it. As a disclaimer, by the very nature of these videos, there will be some spoilers. So, fair warning. To start things off, we'll be taking a look at our home in deep space, the Oracle Fleet, and our group of spacefaring scientists turned false-spawn exterminators, ARCs. So, what does ARCs stand for, you might ask? ARCs stands for Artificial Relict to Keep Species. Yes, relict is an actual word, it's not just some crazy English. The inhabitants of Oracle were descended from an ancient race who fought against the profound darkness but subsequently lost their ability to use photons. They needed to figure out a way to regain that ability, so they created the humans, who in turn created the other three races, Newmans, Casts, and Doomans. Arcs is the defense.
Wait, so is this, if I heard that right, this is a pre-human civilization and they're the ones responsible for creating humans. Okay, that's neat. I think I missed that the first time. I knew that the other ones were created as well. I just didn't know the humans were also created.
Defense force of the Oracle fleet, whose main purpose was exploration and research. They did face one major existential threat, though. The Fallspawn, led by none other than Dark Falls. The Fallspawn had already invaded a number of planets before setting their sights on Oracle, whose inhabitants would learn the hard way that conventional weapons just did not work on these guys. At some point, they discovered that photons were effective against these freaks, and subsequently fast-tracked research into weaponizing them. This would signal a major pivot, as they would devote everything they had into eradicating the scourge from the universe. But this research came at a heavy cost, though. The first generation ARCs knew next to nothing about how photons reacted with living beings, resulting in some major disparities in photon ability. On the one hand, you had those with none at all, and on the other hand, you had those whose natural bodies couldn't stand the strain, so they had to be converted into casts. Yet, in spite of these shortcomings, they still managed to repel Dark Falls Elder and seal up his essence on the planet Nefarious, ending an event that would come to be known as the Elder War.
Yo, so casts. I thought they were just robots. I thought they were robots. That's pretty cool. I mean, get to have a human who could not withstand the photon, and therefore had to become, I guess, an android at that point, right? I guess they're not. They were humans, and they were just made into casts, I guess. So I guess it's like a cyborg or an android, right? What it sounds like.
But this cost them dearly, and they would need to reorganize once again, putting the three greatest heroes of the Elder War at the helm. Advances in photon research birthed the second generation of ARCs, but due to their inability to manipulate photons flexibly, they were locked into a single class. It was at this point that ARCs realized they needed a new governing body, so the trio of heroes, alongside three of ARC's best and brightest, formed the Council of Six. Now we come to the third and current generation of ARCs. Thanks to even greater strides in photon research, all the limitations from the previous generations had all but become a thing of the past. Now let's take a look at the power structure. Just like with any other military organization, ARCS has its own distinct branches, and initially there were three. First up, you had the Research and Exploration Unit. These were the ones in the front lines, exploring previously discovered planets and mopping up any Fallspawn they would encounter. Next up, you had the Central Research Division, in charge of what you'd expect, from basic quality of life developments to military research. And finally, you had the Special Planetary Exploration Unit, aka ALTER. These guys had their own ARC ship called the Delta Valiant, and scouted out the farthest reaches of the universe for potential hospitable planets. ARCs would restructure yet again, consolidating some of the previous departments. At the top, you had the Admiral and their adjutant. Just below that are the Departments of Combat, General Affairs, Training, and Intelligence. These function the way you'd expect, with the majority manning the front lines in the Combat Bureau. Join us next time as we take a look at the perennial scourge of the Phantasy Star franchise, Dark Falls. Thanks for watching.
That was a nice little clip. So let me see if I got this right. So ARCs. So humans were created. The humans were created. I was gonna say the Dark Elves were created because it's pretty much the same thing, right? You got elves and Dark Elves. Oh, Stellar Grace. What the fuck is this shit? Oh, I think. Oh. Stellar Grace Recovery Operation. Requesting participation of all available ARCs. What the fuck is this? Ah, man. That's what I get for not looking at updates. I should have checked out someone's video on this. Essentially, they found out photons were a good way to defend themselves against, I guess, Dark Falls or whatever was pulling the strings there. They don't know how to control photon. They realized later that not everyone control photons. Some people can, some people couldn't. Some people with too much strain on their body and they had to become casts. And they made a Council of Six, right? Which I guess were different. I think the Council of Six is just like the six, you know, one for each class essentially, right? I think it is one MVP for each class. So let's go ahead and keep playing.
Every established media franchise, whether it's a series of games, books, or movies, is bound to adopt a number of recurring elements throughout its lifetime. These things often become the cornerstones of a franchise's identity. With Final Fantasy, you have chocobos and engineers named Sid. With Super Mario, you have Bowser and Princess Peach. And with Phantasy Star, you have the subject of today's episode, Dark Falls. My name is Zeo, and I'll be your lore keeper. Once again, there will be some spoilers, and not just for PSO2. So, fair warning. Also, since episodes 5 and 6 aren't available yet outside Japan at the time of this recording, we're just going to be limiting our scope to the first 3 episodes. Before we talk about PSO2's Falls, let's take a look at some of its previous incarnations. Dark Falls, or Dark Force as we outside Japan knew it back in the Genesis days, was the millennial scourge of the Algol solar system, appearing once every 1,000 years. Its main goal was to destroy Algol, whose planet served as a seal for the Profound Darkness. Dark Falls would return in the original PSO, but have no connection with the one on Algol. Its essence was sealed up in the ruins of a ship underneath planet Ragol. However, Rico Tyrell, who was a scientist from Pioneer 1, would inadvertently break the seal and subsequently become its new host. 7 years later, Pioneer 2 reaches Ragol with the main group of refugees, but just as the vessel makes contact, a massive explosion occurs on the surface, kicking off the events of Episode 1. With that little bit of history, let's take a look at Dark Falls as it appears in PSO2. Unlike in previous iterations, more than one Dark Falls exists at the same time. But just like the one that terrorized Algol, these ones have the same main objective. A Dark Falls manifests itself through the intense negative emotions of its hosts via the Profound Darkness. A manifested Falls takes on not just the physical attributes of its hosts, but its personality as well. So while their main job is unsealing the Profound Darkness, they aren't necessarily bound to this task. They also command their own hordes of Fall spawn, ranging from insects to giant toys. Each Falls has 3 distinct forms: their slightly altered normal body, a larger humanoid form, and their massive final form. First up, we'll take a look at Elder, the Gargantuan. Elder is the first Dark Falls that we encounter, and is the main antagonist for the events of Episode 1. Like his name would suggest, Elder is the oldest and perhaps strongest Dark Falls, even in his normal form. Elder's reign of destruction would eventually lead him to the planet Nefarious, where his essence would be subsequently sealed up by Arcs. 40 years later, an extremely hot-headed Arcs operative by the name of Gedamholt would seek to unseal Elder and challenge him to a fight to prove he's the strongest. Elder is set free, but Gedamholt winds up becoming its new host. After a brief confrontation, Elder begins to assume his final form. A massive pillar of dark energy visible from space gushes out from the planet's surface. The planet-sized abomination then makes its way into space, accompanied by an entourage of giant arms. Ark's forces would soon mobilize to bring down this monstrosity, but Elder disappears and reunites with his fellow collective members. Next, we come to Luther, the Fallen. Luther is the last of the ancient Photoner race that preceded the other races. Luther is extremely intelligent, but that's not good enough for him. No, he wants to be all-knowing. A quest that would lead him all the way to the core of the Oracle Mothership. But those plans go to pieces, and Luther's seething anger and hatred give birth to another Dark Falls, Loser. This name is a bit of wordplay in the Japanese version that would become lost.
I'm sorry, his name is Loser or Luther? Because if it's Loser, that's my man. That's new handle. Thank you.
Lost in translation. That ego and extreme desire for omniscience are cranked up to 11, as now he means to achieve that goal by consuming the entire universe. After merging with the corrupted mothership, Loser would assume his final form, but was ultimately defeated.
His final
and cut
form,
down by
bigger
Regulus.
Loser.
But his tale of catastrophic failure didn't end there, as moments later he'd become a snack for Gemini, the duplicate. Gemini are a pair of twins with the same mind, and just like regular kids, they can be extremely playful, albeit incredibly destructive. The twins can copy pretty much anything, including entire planets, even smashing said planets into each other because, you know, it's fun. When it came to the task of reawakening the Profound Darkness, Gemini was definitely the most faithful to this cause, and these two were definitely the most sinister of the bunch. The previous iterations of PSO always had a massive problem with item duplication, or duping. Gemini could, well, dupe things, and was the most evil of the bunch. Maybe this was their way at poking fun at the people who did that back in the day. Whether or not this was done on purpose, we'll never know. Next, we come to Apprentice, the Vernal. This one holds the record for being the Falls with the most hosts. We don't know much about the previous hosts, but one of its most recent is Zaphan's older sister, Euclida. The previous host attempts to possess Euclida, but is cut off midway when Gemini shows up, leaving Euclida in incomplete form. She still has some of Apprentice's powers, but she still can't transform. But its second half would awaken underneath the mining bases on Lilipa. Finally, we have Persona the Masked. Persona is different from the others as it doesn't use false spawn or transform, nor does it require a host, much like Gemini. To close things off, it's only right that we take a look at the progenitor of these fiends, the Profound Darkness. Remember how the Photoners initially sealed up the Profound Darkness? Well, guess what? They're the ones who created this mess. The Profound Darkness was the result of an experiment gone horribly wrong and would have major implications, not just for them, but for the entire universe. Realizing that they had messed up, big time, they needed to seal it up ASAP. Because it's the embodiment of pure evil, its influence remains throughout the universe. And so long as the Profound Darkness exists, so too shall Darkfalls and False Spawn. Now that we've examined the two main opposing forces, we can take a look at some of the characters that make the world of PSO2 what it is. As always, thanks for watching. You are the one with the lost past. And the subject of this week's episode, Matoy. Here, we aim to explore the settings and main characters of the PSO2.
I gotta pay attention here, because these fucking weebs love Matoy, okay? That's all I hear about. People fucking lose their shit when they hear Matoy. Gotta get them keychains, gotta get them waifus. Alright. Might check out the anime after this to see what the whole all the fuss is about. Because my relationship with PSO is just, I played it on the GameCube. That's it. I played it in the GameCube with my cousin, a friend of ours in high school. Let us borrow the game. He was like, "Nah, fool, you never gonna finish this game. It's so hard." And we're like, "All right, cool." And we were playing. This is offline, Phantasy Star Online offline, split screen. No memory card. Let's go. We didn't get a memory card until afterwards, but I think we were playing without a memory card at first. And oh my god, man, I didn't even understand the concept of a memory card. I think because I was like, what the fuck is this shit? Because I didn't have a PlayStation. I had a 64. I think some games in 64 they had memory cards, but it was not like common. I think you needed I know there was an expansion pack. I'm not sure if the expansion pack was for. I think it was just for like more RAM, right, or more processing power, some shit like that.
Trial start.
But yeah. So hopefully, oh shit. Let me see. I think the group is saying something. I said hi and I didn't say shit afterwards. Hold on. Let me check. Guys, really quick so I can get my fucking thing done. Mid mod lab for your weekly is not the reason at all. Geo lab, sure, block. Guess if they got room for. Block 13. Okay. Just kills motherfucker quick.
Target eliminated. Good work. Success.
Let me check really quick. I feel so bad. I haven't really fucked around with Geo. feel so bad because like I cleared it twice, I think. I feel so bad. He thinks I'm Japanese. No. People love me. I'm just. Let me see if they're on the Discord because I think it would be easier to chat with them. Still looking for group. A little iffy on doing geolab since I don't really want to fuck up for anyone. Like I would feel bad just joining and just fucking everyone's game plan. I guess in the meantime I'll just farm more fucking things. What the fuck is this shit? I have to pause Zeo's videos for a bit so I can figure out what's going on here.
Universe and their significance to the story. My name is Zeo, and I'll be your lore keeper. Once again, there will be spoilers considering how she's such an important character in the story. So, fair warning. Also, since episodes 5 and 6 aren't available outside Japan yet at the time of this recording, we'll be limiting our scope to the first 3 episodes. Her Japanese voice is Satomi Sato, who also voiced Ritsu Tanaka from K-On! And Magilu from Tales of Berseria. In the English dub, she's voiced by Xanthi Huyn, whom you might recognize as Haru Okumura from Persona 5, and Suzuka Tsukimura from Magical Girl Lyrical
Wait,
Nanoha.
I just missed some fucking
Before we delve
lore.
into her backstory,
Hold
let's
up,
look at some
hold
voiced
up.
by Xanthi. In the English dub, she's voiced by Xanthi Huyn,
Oh,
whom
just
you
a
might
voice actor.
recognize as
Okay,
Haru
voice actress.
Okumura from Persona 5,
About
and
to say.
Suzuka Tsukimura from Magical Girl Lyrical Nanoha. Before we delve into her backstory, let's look at something that
You know what,
jumps
let me
out
do
right
this fucking
away.
card.
Her name. Writers name their characters to convey a number of things about them, especially important ones. Matoi is a Japanese name that can either be used as a last name or a first name for both males and females. Even though her name's written in katakana, the kanji for Matoi means entwining or tying, like a rope or a thread. So
Oh yeah, I remember
would
this
suggest
video.
that our fate and hers are
I remember this
somehow
from fucking
intertwined.
Matoi
Whether or not
Ryuko
the
from
writers
Kill la
did
Kill
this on
because of
purpose
Thread.
is certainly up for debate, but it seems very plausible given her importance throughout the story. Also worth pointing out is the red and white color scheme present throughout her design. Red is a color that represents courage, power, determination, and aggression, among other things. White, on the other hand, represents innocence, light, purity, and safety. Both colors can also represent sacrifice. These two colors represent so many facets of her personality and backstory, and this is even reflected in the evolution of her character design over time. With that out of the way, we can start cutting into some of that backstory. During our qualification exam on the planet Nefarious, we find a mysterious young woman, clad in white, unconscious on the ground. Since a forest on a remote planet isn't exactly the safest place, we decide that
Why does bitch look like Hatsune Miku? Okay.
it's best to take her with us back to the ship where she can receive medical attention. We get the call from the medical staff. She's awake, but not very talkative. So we meet up with her and discover that she knows our name, even though we didn't tell her, and she tells us that her name is Matoi. The medical staff are totally puzzled. There's no record of this girl anywhere, but physiologically, she's identical to everyone else on the ship. Any memory of her past is completely gone. Apart from some basic knowledge, she is essentially a blank slate. She has some other interesting things about her though. For one thing, she could see Shion just like us. Also, we find out that she is insanely powerful, being able to cast techniques aboard the ship, bypassing the photon inhibitors found on every ARC ship. So why does she have all this power? Well, our sweet little Matoi used to be someone else. And that someone else was Claris Craze II of the Council of Six. Because the odd-numbered members made up the trio of heroes that won the Elder War, their names are passed down to their successors whenever one passes away. During her time as Claris Craze, Matoi spent most of her time alone because her immense power and ferocity scared the other ARCS operatives and she didn't know how to deal with it. When it came to dealing with Falspawn, Matoi meant business. She was strong enough to obliterate hordes of Falspawn single-handedly and go
I feel like I'm doing this fucking video a disservice. If you happen to watch this, Zeo, I am very sorry. I should be showing your video and then minimizing my gameplay on the face cam. I'm just a fucking noob. I don't know how to do it. Or I mean, I could figure it out, but I just don't want to spend the time in doing it right now, to be honest. But maybe next time, if I don't finish these, I will do that. I like how you edit these, man. They're really nice. Like the time you put into these is really cool. Like you showcase the cutscene stuff. I like the breakdowns. They're like nice, digestible videos. It's great. So I feel like I should be displaying not my gameplay. I should be displaying your video and then like having the little window for the face cam, having that for my gameplay. You know, just doing like a little window within window. I might do that next time. I just wanted to point it out there. I'm sorry. Your work clearly is way more cooler. So I'll be doing that next time. I really don't have. It's not like I'm doing anything crazy in the rest of gameplay. So I'm just chilling. Just wanted to point it out there.
toe-to-toe with the Dark Falls. Even normal weapons couldn't stand up to this immense power of hers. But that incident with Apprentice 10 years ago took a heavy toll on her. The photon purification after that incident came at the cost of her memory, and she was sent 10 years into the future, to the point where we first met her. Yet somehow, we're the only thing not blotted from her memory. Matoi is now officially an ARCS operative, and we're sent to the planet Harukotan. A war was brewing between the two provinces, and someone from the outside was pulling its strings. Our quest for the source of this conflict brings us to the climax of our journey. It is here that the symbolism behind the name of our sweet little Matoi is driven home. Destinies intertwined, inextricably bound. But now it's time to rest and cleanse ourselves of the corrupted photons we've taken in along the way, and begin a new journey as Guardians. Okay. Writing and recording that was a tough one. And replaying the cutscenes to capture the B-roll was also emotional, and not just for the in-game content. So, what do you say, we turn our attention to less serious topics? As always, thanks for watching. Over the past century, mascots have become just as much a part of a brand's identity as the product itself. Sports teams, restaurants, game franchises, and even YouTube channels have all leveraged mascots to help advance their brand. And Phantasy Star is no exception, being represented by the time and space transcending Rappy. Here, we aim to explore the settings, people, creatures, and armaments of the PSO2 universe, their context within the Phantasy Star franchise, and any possible real-world parallels. My name is Zeo, and I'll be your lore keeper. Our story begins in 1990 with Phantasy Star 3, Successors of Time, on the Mega Drive. Released the following year in the States as Phantasy Star 3, Generations of Doom on the Genesis. In the city-state of Landon, a young prince named Reese is set to marry his bride Maya, but just as they exchange their vows, she's captured by a mysterious dragon figure. Reese is understandably grieving and vows vengeance, wanting to mobilize an army to find Maya, but his father, the more pragmatic, level-headed type, has him locked in the dungeon to cool his heels. But Reese doesn't stay in there for long, as a young woman comes and helps him escape and urges him to go after Maya. Just outside the city, Rappies are among the first foes that Reese encounters on his adventures, and his descendants would later encounter mechanical variants as well. We'd see the birds in the next game, Phantasy Star 4, The End of the Millennium. The village of Tarinko on the planet Matavia has a bird problem and needs the help of the Hunters Guild. The Rappies set up home base in a cave east of the village with their king. After a battle with Chaz and friends, the king retreats and the other birds are sent packing as well. The crops are safe. 7 years later, at the tail end of 2000, Phantasy Star Online would make its debut on the Dreamcast, and usher in the design of the Rappy that we've all come to know. This is also where the Rappies would gain a number of their distinct personality traits. On the forests of the planet Ragol, we're introduced to a diverse cast of birds, ranging from the classic yellow to white, to the more sought-after blue and even rainbow variants. Even special holiday variants are known to exist. These rare birds are sought after by hunters for their unique treasure. At some point, the hunters of Pioneer 2 would be dispatched to the deserts of the planet Ragol to investigate a massive impact crater. It is there that they'd encounter a subspecies of Rappy called the Sand Rappy, which more or less behaved like its cousins in the forest. In Phantasy Star Universe, the classic yellow Rappy would appear as a rare enemy, but its more common white-feathered cousins would appear on the planet New Days. Now we come to their current iterations in PSO2.
Gotta get 'em.
Their natural habitat is the
where's he
planet Nefarious, where they're dubbed Nav Rappies. Appearance-wise, they're almost identical to their cousins on Ragol. Fledgling ARX operatives are often given the task of collecting data from Nav Rappies, but their penchant for running away at the slightest bit of danger often makes this difficult. Its rare cousin, the bulbous-headed chibi-style Rappy, doesn't have a set habitat. Just like their predecessors, these birds are fond of dressing up for holidays and special events. This also makes them a popular target for treasure-hunting ARX operatives. Now that we've made a thorough account of the Rappy's history throughout the franchise, let's examine some of their common physical and personality traits. While their design has certainly evolved over the years, a number of key characteristics remain unchanged. They're short, yellow birds with Y-shaped talons and a pair of large antennae on their heads. Their short wingspan makes them unable to fly, instead using them like a pair of human arms. They'll often employ their beaks or claws as a means of self-defense, and in some rare cases, even wield techniques. Rappies are timid yet territorial animals, preferring safety in numbers. Rappies often form groups, communicating to one another in song when there's no clear and present danger. Rappies will defend their territory against any would-be intruders, but if an encounter turns sideways, the Rappy will play dead and wait for its assailant to lose interest before making its getaway. Unlike their counterparts in another JRPG franchise, Rappies don't serve any apparent practical purpose. In our introduction, we talked a little bit about mascots, so why don't we bookend our time together by exploring the Rappy's capacity as such. Since the series reboot in 2000, the Rappy has risen to prominence as its mascot, solidifying that role even further in recent years. The Rappy's likeness has appeared on countless pieces of merchandise over the years, from prepaid cards to baked goods. There's also a number of unofficial fan-made products out there. Even though PSO2 has a couple mascot characters of its own, such as Lillipens or Arkuma, the Rappy shall forever rule them all.
Thank you for your contribution.
Uh-oh. Do I hear the sound of dismembered falspawn, accompanied by sadistic laughter? As always, thanks for watching. Over the past several decades, tales of time and space travel and humanoid robots have become popular hallmarks of the sci-fi genre, so it's only natural that these elements appear in Japanese RPGs as well. Here, we aim to explore the settings, characters, creatures, and armaments of the PSO2 universe, their context within the Phantasy Star franchise, and any possible parallels to the real world. My name is Zeo, and I'll be your lore keeper. The original plan was to have Risa in the spotlight, but that has since evolved into being about casts in general. Risa doesn't gain significance in the story until later on, but we'll still be referencing her from time to time. Dancing around certain things that don't happen until the latter episodes has proven challenging. So, henceforth, we shall refrain from covering any specific characters until the curtain has fallen on episode 6 outside Japan. Casts, sometimes called androids or cyborgs, are sturdy mechanical beings found throughout the Phantasy Star franchise. They're often characterized by their high levels of stamina and affinity for melee or ranged combat, and apart from a few exceptions, casts are unable to wield techniques. Just like with the Rappies, our first port of call is the third game in the franchise, Phantasy Star 3: Generations of Doom on the Genesis. Here, we meet the cyborgs Mew and Ren, Mew being the red-haired female, and Ren being the black-haired male. These two would serve as staple party members for Prince Reese and his descendants throughout the game. Mew and Ren would also have the distinction of being the only non-fleshies that could use techniques. Mew's technique centered around support, like Resta, whereas Ren's focused on offense, like Foy. In Phantasy Star 4, we'd be introduced to Demi and Ren. It should be noted that this isn't the same Ren from the last game. These two can't use techniques, but their high HP and physical strength more than make up for this. Now we come to Phantasy Star Online. Here, they're called androids, and just like their predecessors, they can't use techniques. To make up for this, they can use traps which allow them to freeze enemies in place or confuse them, as well as do flat damage. They also have access to slow traps, but only while sparring with fellow Hunters Guild members. Males have exceptionally high health and attack power, whereas females sport high accuracy and defensive stats. The casts in Phantasy Star Zero were functionally identical, but they also had access to healing traps. Now we come to Phantasy Star Universe and its handheld sequels. Casts were originally created to serve humans, but they eventually became self-aware and developed free will. This led to a years-long struggle for caste rights, which they would ultimately win. As a result, the vast majority of the planetary government on the planet Param was held by castes. Clones of non-castes called copy castes are also known to exist. The castes on the Goral system are a sturdy lot, able to take almost as much abuse as their beast counterparts. Their exceptional attack power and accuracy make them excellent hunters. They also have another trump card in the form of the mighty SUV weapon, capable of dishing out massive damage to larger enemies or clearing out hordes of smaller ones. There were cases of castes wanting to use techniques like their human and Newman brethren, but they were often met with scorn and derision by their fellow guardians. Now we come to their current iteration in PSO2. Castes are mechanical beings that retain a small amount of organic material from their previous lives. The caveat is they have no memory of their previous lives, which would no doubt be a mercy in some cases. A human could be turned into a caste for any number of reasons. One could be photon sickness brought on by the person's extremely high photon potential, Risa being the most notable case. Another scenario would be the person sustaining grievous injury, in combat or otherwise, and they wanted to keep living despite the memory loss. Or they could just be older and want to continue serving arcs in combat, but without the limitations of their natural bodies. Regius and Maria would be noteworthy cases. And let's not forget that Arx was insanely corrupt while Luther was in charge, so it would stand to reason that a number of people were converted against their will. This is never stated explicitly, but given what we know about Luther, it seems very plausible. It's also not uncommon for military organizations in the real world to use their rank and file as lab rats, with or without their knowledge or consent. The conversion process wasn't without its kinks though. The earliest castes seem to have suffered immense psychological damage too, Risa once again being the most notable case. So because of this, it would suggest that the memory loss would become a feature rather than a bug. And then you had the numerous false spawn encounters followed by the Elder War. Did Risa and others have some ancillary purpose in those encounters? We do know that ARCs incurred some heavy losses at the time, so a number of things could be left up to interpretation. Over the past 3 decades, the fields of robotics, cybernetics, and artificial intelligence have made massive improvements, but they still have a long way to go before they reach the level of the machines we just talked about. Science fiction has always been about exploring the implications of scientific and technological advancements beyond our age. So that begs the question, would you want to be a cast, even if it meant sacrificing your memory and potentially your sanity? As for myself, I'm gonna have to take a hard pass on that. So this thing almost didn't happen this week on account of the fires burning across the Pacific United States. So shout out to the firefighters and other fantastic first responders out there. You folks are the real guardians. As always, thanks for watching. Since the early days of science fiction, authors have explored the implications of combining human DNA with that of other creatures. So just like with machines, it would come as no surprise that JRPGs would adopt this trend also. Here, we aim to explore the settings, characters, creatures, and armaments of the PSO2 universe, their context within the Phantasy Star franchise, and any possible parallels with the real world. My name is Zeo, and I'll be your lore keeper. If you recall our time together previously, we discussed the hardy mechanical casts, which dovetails nicely with today's topic, the enigmatic Dooman. To give an account for the Dooman's history, we don't have to go back very far. The Dooman race made its debut in the Japan-exclusive Phantasy Star Portable 2 Infinity on the PSP in 2011. Unlike their Newman and Beast counterparts, the Doomans were not birthed from genetic engineering, but instead were humans mutated by the seed virus that plagued the Graal system. Doomans are known for their pale and skinny appearance, leading one to believe that they are not fit for combat, but don't let appearances fool you. Doomans possess the innate ability to manipulate photons within their bodies, affording them great offensive power. They're also able to channel these photons into their weapons, creating a powerful attack known as the Infinity Blast. But this immense offensive power comes at a cost. Since Doomans are not known for their hardy constitutions, their defensive capabilities are found very much lacking. It should be noted that those eye patches aren't just a fashion statement. They serve as a limiter of sorts to keep their immense power in check. The Doomans of Oracle are known for their pale skin, dichromatic eye color, and the horns on top of their heads. The males have a single horn, whereas the females sport 2 of them. These horns serve as photon receptors, much like the ears of a Newman. To better understand the Dooman's origins, we must first examine the Chrome Dragon, or rather, one specific Chrome Dragon, by the name of Hadrid. And we must also give an account for Hadrid's relationship with one assassin songstress by the name of Kuna. Just as a heads up, there will be some episode 1 spoilers here. Luther had conducted countless unscrupulous experiments. Kuna and Hadrid were also part of his laundry list of lab rats over the years. Kuna and Hadrid were born and raised in the same laboratory. They became the best of friends, almost like brother and sister. One day, Kuna is to be part of an experiment, but Hadrid goes in her stead, never to be seen again. Sometime later, Kuna is a member of the Death Squad and number 0 of the Council of Six. Hadrid is branded a traitor to ARCs, and at the behest of her superiors, Kuna is sent to find and slay him. Though his sanity may be gone as a result of the experiments, he is still driven by the primal urge to protect Kuna. Though Hadrid cannot speak, Kuna sees that he wishes to suffer no more. But before she grants this wish, they have one final battle. After the confrontation, Hadrid speaks his first and last words, "Sing me that song once more." And a tearful Kuna is happy to oblige. After the final blow is dealt, Hadrid's body disappears, and the yellow ribbon that once adorned his left horn also vanishes. Said ribbon turns up several hundred years in the past, and the DNA found on it is used to create the Dooman race. So as of this recording, the very first lore video broke 1,000 views the other day. I am truly humbled by the tremendous support that I've received over these past few weeks. As always, thanks for watching. Japanese RPGs, and even some Western ones, have borrowed elements from the ancient Far East and made them their own. But when Phantasy Star does things, they take it to a planetary scale. Here, we aim to explore the settings, characters, creatures, and armaments of the PSO2 universe, their context within the Phantasy Star franchise, and any possible parallels with the real world. My name is Zeo, and I'll be your lore keeper. Today, we're traveling to the East Asia-inspired world of Harukotan. If you're brand new here, we also like to explore things such as name origins and design influences wherever possible. The name Harukotan is likely a reference to two words: Haru, the Japanese word for spring, and Kotan, the Ainu word meaning village, settlement. So, Harukotan could mean spring village. Also worth noting is that when viewed from space, the planet resembles the yin-yang symbol. This symbol represents the Chinese Taoist concept of duality, the yin representing the dark, and the yang representing the light, reflecting the planet's two distinct regions. With that little bit of exposition out of the way, we can now delve into the planet's backstory. The planet's surface is split into two distinct regions, both having their own unique geographical and meteorological traits. A large river flows between the bright and sunny Daybreak Province and the dark and stormy Nightfall Province. Both regions are home to massive creatures dwarfing even the tallest of ARC's operatives. To say the inhabitants of these two regions didn't get along would be an understatement. Since time immemorial, Daybreakers and Nightfallers had been locked in perpetual conflict. Both sides grew weary of the perpetual bloodshed, so a peace accord was established between the two by wedding the daughter of the Day Lord and the son of the Night Lord, who would subsequently produce a child named Sukuna Hime. But there was a problem. The baby bore no resemblance to her parents whatsoever. Both sides would blame one another for this mishap, and the drums of war would beat again. Even her own parents would turn their blades on each other, but Sukuna Hime would step between them, sacrificing herself. So grieved by this act, her parents would come to their senses, sacrificing themselves to give Sukuna Hime life once again. The Ash Maiden's tears would create the river that separates the two regions, and peace would return for the time being. Sometime later, ARC's operatives are dispatched to Harukotan to investigate the appearance of another Dark Falls. One fateful day, the Nightfallers, accompanied by a horde of Fallspawn, would lay siege on the Daybreak province. Just as a warning, there will be some late Episode 3 spoilers coming up. We were led to believe that the Nightfallers had been brainwashed by Gemini, but it was far more sinister than that. The twins had devoured and cloned the entire Nightfaller population, setting off the events leading to the release of the planet breaker, Magatsu. Much like Dark Falls, Magatsu is a being born of negative emotions and seeks to eradicate all life. So it should come as no surprise that the likes of Gemini would be interested in unsealing him. Sukuna Hime succeeds in resealing Magatsu, but a portion of his essence escapes and manifests itself. Sukuna Hime and Magatsu are the gods of this world, representing life and death, respectively. Harukotan is the world of contrasts, the world of opposites. Spring and fall, light and dark, life and death. Sukuna Hime and Magatsu. So we've done settings, people, and creatures, but not armaments. So next week, that changes. As always, thanks for watching. For every task, there exists the perfect tool. So it would come as no surprise that ARCS would have mech suits as part of its extensive arsenal. Here, we aim to explore the settings, characters, creatures, and armaments of the PSO2 universe, their context within the Phantasy Star franchise, and any possible parallels with the real world. You know who I am? But if you don't, my name is Zeo, and I'll be your lore keeper. Today, we're getting in the robot and peering inside the cockpit of the mighty AIS. So what does that crazy acronym even mean? Well, AIS stands for ARCS Interception Silhouette. So, how did these things come into service, besides the game developers needing an excuse to add in giant robots? The remote mining bases on the desert planet of Lilipa are home to precious natural resources. Naturally, it would make them a prime target for Fallspawn. The intensity of these attacks had begun to ramp up over time, and ARCS needed a new way of dealing with these threats. This sounds like a job for the Central Research Division. Their solution? A large, heavily armored, yet surprisingly nimble, humanoid mech suit. The pilot enters and exits through a hatch on the back of the unit. While inside, the pilot is protected by its heavily armored head section, with the visor doubling as a window. The AIS cuts an imposing figure and is 10 meters of Fallspawn busting power. So let's take a look at some of that artillery. As a heavily armored combat suit, its arsenal is about what you would expect. The standard weapon loadout of the AIS supports both long-ranged and close-quarters combat. In its right hand is the Solid Vulcan, your standard assault rifle, capable of firing an infinite number of high-caliber bullets. ideal for dispatching smaller targets. The rifle can attach to an underbarrel on the back of the unit to unleash either a salvo of rockets or a devastating laser beam. Should the enemy get too close, the AIS can cut them down with its massive photon saber. Despite its bulky appearance, the AIS is not lacking in mobility. The thrusters on its back and its legs allow it to dash around any battlefield with ease. These armaments can be modified, making AIS units incredibly adaptable. An example of this would be on the planet Earth, where the Phantom battleship Yamato would appear over the Pacific Ocean to attack Tokyo. ARCs would mobilize a squadron of AIS units to deal with this threat. These units would have an upgraded thruster module allowing for sustained flight. They also had heavy-duty freezing rounds, which froze the battleship in place, allowing ARC's operatives to advance on foot. But the Yamato would break free of its icy prison and descend to the skies, prompting ARC's ground units to retreat and re-engage in their AIS units for one final showdown. Each unit would also be equipped with a repair module, healing not only the user, but any other AIS units nearby. Another variant, called the Vega, was developed for deep space combat and had its own unique set of tools in addition to the standard gun and sword. Not only did it have thrusters tailored for maneuvering in zero gravity, it also had a shield which could deflect oncoming enemy fire. While AIS are designed as anti-false spawn weapons, that doesn't make them immune to false spawn corruption themselves. For missions involving false spawn, they aren't meant to be used long term. Since the rise in popularity of mecha anime, fans have often wondered if giant robots would be the next frontier in armed combat. As cool as it may sound, the laws of physics will have to answer that with a resounding no. There's just too much to account for, making them untenable in any situation with our current technology. Like what you just watched? Well, smash that like button, smash it like you mean it. And if you haven't already, do the same with that subscribe button and that notification bell. And of course, share with your friends. That tells YouTube to put this content out in front of more people. Set that algorithm on fire. As always, thanks for watching. Legendary weapons have been a hallmark of storytelling since ancient times. These mighty tools are said to have turned the tide in battles past, often with supernatural results. They're just as much a part of a culture's folklore as the mighty heroes who wielded them. Here, we aim to explore the settings, characters, creatures, and armaments of the PSO2 universe, their context within the Phantasy Star franchise, and any possible parallels with the real world. My name is Zeo, and I'll be your lore keeper. Today, we explore the origin of all modern ARC's weaponry, the cosmogenic arms, or Genesis weapons if you prefer. The most informed informants, Patty and Tia, tell us that all modern ARC's weapons are toned-down versions of these ancient arms. Long ago, a select group of photoners volunteered to infuse their life essence into a set of weapons. Because this process is so unique, each cosmogenic arm is one of a kind and cannot be perfectly reproduced. So far, only the legendary blacksmith Zig and Oracle Head Luther have been able to replicate a cosmogenic arm anywhere near its true potential. Despite their immense power, these legendary weapons are not bereft of their own horrifying side effects. As a result, they're only used by the cream of the crop among ARC's ops, most notably the Council of Six. Now, why don't we take a look at a few of these weapons? While several of them have been known to exist, there's just not enough information out there. So we'll be limiting our scope to the 4 that I feel are most noteworthy. First up is Yono
I'm gonna pause it for a second just to get something to drink, and then we'll come back and keep listening to more and running more of these Geo Labs. Be right back. All right, I'm back. So I just noticed that all this time prior to me going on break, I was Oh wait, what happened? Oh shit. Oh no, someone. I just noticed all this time when we were listening to the videos, I was on mute. So all my little side comments and commentary was for nothing. So I was pointing out how like I liked the last video with Zeo because he seemed a little more. I liked it a little bit more. He seemed a little more relaxed, more joking a little bit, making comment like trying to be funny at the end. You know, smash the subscribe button, like it, fuck up the algorithm, help me out, guys. I like that. That was pretty cool. I mean, I wanted to see him hopefully throughout the progress of the videos. Oh shit, we're gonna go to the city? Okay. Let's go. Hopefully through the next few videos we see him be a little bit less uptight. He seemed I like his voice. He seems a little bit stiff, a little bit not nervous, but maybe he's trying to sound, I guess, professional, which is fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just he seems that he's not in his comfort zone, right? So I hope that with the progress of these videos that he's pumping out, we get to see kind of like the real him in his zone, him in his comfort zone. So I'm excited to keep listening to these and see how they progress.
Hate, the World Ender, wielded by Regius. Since Regius is the first member of the council, it's only fitting that we talk about his first. Rumor has it that this blade is so strong, it can cleave
Eat
an
shit,
entire
Rock Bear, he
planet
just
in
fell.
two when unsheathed. The blade puts enormous physical strain on its user, perhaps even more so in Regius's case due to his age. Whenever he did use it, he swung it around like an ordinary sword, inflicting damage with that massive scabbard.
I'm getting hit like a
After Luther's
dumbass.
countless sins were laid bare for all to see, Regius would use its unsealed form to cut him
Can't
down.
see.
Both forms of the Yonohama
Wish I could
would
zoom
appear in
out.
Phantasy Star Zero, and later in
my
Phantasy
God.
Star Universe as swords. Regius would later have Zig make a new katana for him, called the Blade of Genesis. According
There
to
you go.
Zig, it symbolizes the dawn of a new chapter in Ark's history after the fall of the Old Guard.
Yo, where's my people
His
at?
sister Maria,
Oh,
number
did they,
2 in
did
the
they
council,
bounce already?
would
Oh
possess
shit, I
Labrys,
thought we had to
the
stay there and
Umbral.
fight.
Appearance-wise, it looks like an axe, but functions like a partisan. Labrys is incredibly strong, but the weapon itself just could not support that strength,
My
and
bad.
often needed repairs, so Maria didn't use it much as a result. Another, more dire side effect was that it inflicted the same amount of damage done to the target onto its user. This could have lethal consequences for anyone not strong enough. Next, we have Mai, the Unseen, used by Kuna. These twin daggers have the ability to sense photon signatures and turn the user invisible. The perfect choice for an assassin such as herself. Each use puts a great deal of physical strain on the user, having long-term effects on their health. Finally, we come to Clarissa, the White, wielded by Claris Craze II, whom we know as Matoy. This rod had the ability to purify corrupted photons. Of course, these negative photons had to go somewhere, and that somewhere happened to be the user's body. Large amounts of negative photons could hurt the user or potentially corrupt them. This weapon was also unique for having a portion of Shion's consciousness embedded within. Clarissa would also get the distinction of having the most variants. We have the Ivory Staff Clarissa Advent, which belonged to the original Claris craze and considered one of the most powerful weapons out there. Luther would create his own derivative called Clarissa II the Ashen, used by the current generation Claris craze, which is almost on par with the original power-wise, but minus the photon purification aspect. After losing the original Clarissa, Zig would fashion a replacement for Matoi, just like he did for Regius. So these legendary weapons all seem to have a common thread. With great power comes great responsibility and great peril. Like what you just watched? Well, smash that like button, smash it like you mean it. And if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button. And of course, that notification bell. And of course, share with your friends. That tells YouTube to put this content out in front of more people. Set that algorithm on fire.
Nice, he's doing it again. He's doing it again.
Thanks for watching.
Here you go, Zeo. Keep it up. Keep it up, bro.
So our 10th installment ought to be something special, right? How about the very energy that powers literally everything around here? Wouldn't you say that's pretty special? Yep, you guessed it, we're talking about photons. If you're new here, the goal is to provide you, the viewer, with a richer experience by exploring the things that make the PSO2 universe what it is. My name's Zeo, and I'll be your lore keeper. We get the word photon from the Greek word for light, phos. Photons are bundles of electromagnetic energy and the basic unit that makes up all light. The modern photon theory originated from Albert Einstein in the early 20th century, but that in itself is a pretty deep rabbit hole. He did get the Nobel Prize for that work, though. To better understand photons in PSO2, let's take a little trip through time and space to where it all began. Just like in our world, photons are light particles existing throughout nearly every corner of the universe. These particles are a natural light source visible to the human eye. The folks who discovered photons and began studying them to use as energy would be called the photoners. They did have some space travel capabilities, but they couldn't go very far with what they had. At some point, they'd make contact with a planet made entirely out of water. This wasn't any ordinary planet, though. This was a living ocean with the gift of all knowledge in the universe. You know, like quantum mechanics, the best deep-fried rappy recipe, how to convert photons into energy, all the important stuff. The photoners gave it the name Shion. Thanks to Shion, photon energy conversion is brought to fruition and the previous hurdles of space travel are now gone. This event would kick off a 1,000-year period called light history. At Shion's request, the photoners built a massive shell around the planet as part of their mothership. For all intents and purposes, Shion was the ship's computer. Things were pretty groovy for those first 500 years. They built a fleet of 24 ships that we would come to know as Oracle, and began to study every corner of the universe. To say the least,
God damn it, I
the
wasted it.
Photoners' thirst for knowledge was insatiable. The Photoners had reached the apex of their development, but for them that wasn't enough. They wanted to expand their sphere of control throughout the entire universe. To help them achieve this, they thought having another omniscient presence would be a good idea. So they tried their hand at making their own Shion clone, and failed numerous times. We're all familiar with one of these clones, the impetus for everything that would happen thereafter. Yeah, I'm talking about the Profound Darkness. Photons have this interesting characteristic of responding to emotions. So this abomination fed off every single negative emotion held by the Photoners at the time. Despite being sealed up, its influence was still there, giving rise to Darkfalls and the hordes of Fallspawn that would terrorize the entire universe. Eventually, the people of Oracle would discover that photons were the key to victory, leading to weapons research and the eventual founding of ARCS. To commemorate this occasion, they created a new calendar and called it New Light History, or After Photon, AP for short. Photons have a wide range of uses, like powering cars and spaceships and weapons, and being the only logical explanation for certain things. You know, because photons. Nothing that relies on photons is 100% immune to corruption, though. Not even ARC's operatives, despite being engineered to have a resistance to this effect. Even they can get into trouble if they take in too many corrupted photons. Something that Xiao tells us in no uncertain terms. The closest thing we have to this in the real world is the field of integrated photonics. One of the things being worked on right now in that field is using light to transmit large amounts of data instead of electricity. We won't be using light to send us across the cosmos anytime soon, but this is a start. Like what you just watched? Well, you know what to do. And of course, share with your friends. Next time, I think we'll step outside Oracle for a change. As always, thanks for watching. What's up guys, Zeo here, and today I wanted to do something a little bit different. There's no script here, so we're just going off the cuff.
Okay, scriptless Zeo. Let's find out how Zeo operates without a script. That'll be interesting. Oh shit, I got hit.
Getting Zeo, raw and for the most part unfiltered lore keeper. I did say venture outside of Oracle for a change, and well, this is about as far removed from there as you could get. There will be a little bit of language interspersed here and there, but not too bad. Not gonna be much in the way of supporting visuals, so put this bitch on in the background while you go do dailies or weeklies in-game, or even household chores. So the idea here is to go over some of the feedback, tell you a little bit about myself and possible future projects, and share my thoughts on where I think we might go with NGS. So if you don't give a shit about anything else, I'll put that part in the timestamp. Just remember that a living, breathing human puts this shit together for you. You know, I genuinely never ever thought that I'd find an aspect of PSO2 content that went largely untouched all this time. I mean, yeah, people have done Let's Plays of the story cutscenes over the years, both with and without the English patch, and more recently with the official localization. But not everyone's a fan of that style of content though. So I guess it was a matter of time before someone came along and said, you know what, let's take that information, distill it into something short and sweet, but at the same time, not have them feel like they're missing something. And the past few weeks have shown me, holy shit, there's a demand for that on here. I'll bet there's some Japanese guy out there on Nico Nico who's been doing the same thing for years now. Some of you have offered up words of praise and encouragement. Some of you have pointed out some things that I goofed up on or overlooked, and I appreciate every little bit of that. As thorough and accurate as I try to be here, things do slip through the cracks inevitably. You know, I'm not Shion. You know, some things just have to be omitted so as to not give away too much too soon, and some things just, quite honestly, aren't all that important. Yeah, I've spilled the beans on some things for the sake of context, but I've tried my best to stay away from the major Snape kills Dumbledore shit. Not gonna lie, trying to tailor this stuff around where Global is story-wise has been a pain in the ass and has probably made more work for myself than necessary. However, I do think I made the right call doing it this way so as to reach a wider audience. Now let me tell you a little about myself. I've been playing online games since early 2000. My first online game was this shitty Zelda clone called Grawl Online. Some of you might remember it. The gameplay was just a straight copy of A Link to the Past. My first exposure to Phantasy Star, though, was from this Sega Genesis flyer that a friend gave me. You know, one of those flyers that has screenshots of various games out at the time. And one of them caught my eye. I was like, yo, this looks like Final Fantasy. I look at the titles like Phantasy Star 3, what the hell? A year later, I get my Sega Genesis, and I would be at the video store one day. Yeah, remember those? And one of the games they had...
I want to pause for a second. Letting you hit high score ranks such as which allows for Ninja Dash variant to drop. Ah. Got it. I gotcha. I see. Let's see. Let's see if they want. We could see if someone wants to come along.
Head for rent was Phantasy Star 3, and I was like, hey, that name sounds familiar. So I rent it and pop it in my Genesis. I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. And I'm like, wait, who's the redhead chick? She's kind of cute. Yeah, I had a crush on Mew. And I finally got around to playing the other ones thanks to emulation. I would hear about PSO around that time on the Dreamcast, and I didn't have one yet. So fast forward to my 20th birthday. I'm like, can you give me this Dreamcast with this Phantasy Star Online? Looks pretty cool. So I get that for my birthday, and I was hooked. I didn't play online much the first few weeks. Then I came upon this website called DreamStation that I found through PSO World. So I started hanging around with a few of the DreamStation folks and became friends with a number of them. Went by the name Dark Epion back then since I was a huge Gundam Wing fan. So if you're from that era, you know where the comments section is. So I ding level 100 on a HuCast. Then the fucking memory card gets corrupted like a week later. Over the years, I'd go on to play Final Fantasy XI, Final Fantasy XIV, Phantasy Star Universe, and, of course, PSO2. When PSO2 was first announced 10 years ago, I was like, oh god, here we go again, after the previous experiences with Blue Burst and PSU. When they announced the PSO2 closed beta signups, I was like, what the hell, I'll throw my hat in the ring, I'll give it a shot. So I get in and I play it for a while. I'm like, yo, this isn't half bad. I think I'll stick with it for a while. I did take my share of breaks though, the longest being about 2 years, and that was pretty recent. Came back in late February, early March of this year, around the time of Xbox beta, but I didn't have an Xbox. I just started playing JP again. By the time the NA PC version dropped on the Windows Store, I was already well into getting geared up on the Japanese servers, and by the time the Steam version had dropped, I was pretty well into things. So it was at that point I decided, you know what, I'll log into NA once in a blue moon to dick around, but I'm more invested in JP. I just couldn't be bothered to juggle both. So all the B-roll that I've been using comes from the Japanese version, with the translation patch courtesy of the fine folks at ArcSlayer. Okay, now the real reason you're probably watching. Where do we go with NGS? Just as a disclaimer, there will be some spoilers for later on, so fair warning. So if you haven't really been following New Genesis, it takes place 1,000 years after current PSO2. So we're on this new planet, being threatened by these new enemies called dolls, and we know next to nothing about them besides their name. I guess there's a number of ways they can approach this. This could be a planet we've been to before, but 1,000 years in the future, and some new life forms have shown up. From what they've shown us, it could be Nefarious or somewhere on Amduskia. Could also be Machia from Phantasy Star Nova. I haven't played Nova, but from what I've read about it, the Delta Valiant, the Oracle Scout ship, gets stuck on the planet Machia because it absorbs photons, and they need a new power source to get off the planet. In some of the NGS battle videos, they showed some mobs turning red and getting stronger, and to my understanding, Nova has that feature with some bigger mobs. Could also be another busted Xion clone that the photoners yeeted into subspace. Jeez, how many of those damn things did they make anyway? Holy shit. Could be Vandor from Idola too, set sometime before or after the events of that game. Idola, tomato. As for how we get 1,000 years into the future, well, a number of things present themselves here. Arx's business is concluded after the events of episode 6, so we go sleepy a la episode 3, or due to some subspace mishap we are yeeted 1,000 years into the future, or are the dolls too much for these future people to handle, and after hearing of our exploits, they go back in time to recruit our assistants to deal with the dolls and whoever has sent them in the first place. These all sound very plausible considering how much the writers just love to fuck around with the space-time continuum. No matter how you slice it though, there has to be some kind of inciting incident. There has to be a real good reason for us going to that world 1,000 years into the future. As for myself, I'm in the camp of future person needs our help. That would give some justification to us being able to go back and forth between current PSO2 and NGS. We may not even be restricted to just that planet. We could go to Algol, Gural, hell, even Ragol. As for what business we'd even have in those places, I guess the dolls could have a wider sphere of influence than we're led to believe. Honestly, I wouldn't take anything off the table at this point. As for the future of this channel, we still got Mother Core, Omega, eventually Xion and Xiao, so that's pretty much the rest of the year. I'd also like to go back and put out revised versions of some of the earlier videos, you know, like the Dark Falls one and the Matoi one, but that'll be a while. Some other things I'd like to do in the future are like who did it better, comparing the Japanese and English voices for different characters and major scenes. There's a Dragon Ball creator who does something similar, comparing different versions of the same scene, like with the manga and the original Japanese dub, the English dubs, and the Kai versions. It's pretty cool. Another thing I want to do is take a look at the historical backgrounds of some of the weapons that appear in PSO2. Some of the recurring weapons from the original PSO have some pretty fun backstories, and not just in-universe. And eventually, once I have a bigger footprint on these platforms, I'd like to use them to help raise money for disabled veterans and first responders. Those guys are the real guardians. But PSO2 might not be the play for that, though. You know, wherever this thing takes me via the YouTube videos and or the streams, I'd like for the Zeomantic name to have some good associated with it when it's all said and done. So let's see some of your batshit crazy NGS theories. And let's look back in a few months and see how right or wrong we ended up being. So thank you guys so much for the support so far. And remember, to thine own self be true. Until next time, farewell.
I really like that clip. That was a nice little slice of Zeo's true persona, if you will, like the voice behind the script, the person behind the script. You know, more off the cuff. You know, personal takes, plans, dreams, projects. I liked it. I'm really into knowing the creator of stuff. So I really appreciated this video. It gives me a better understanding of, I guess, who he is, what he's trying to do, why he likes it. So yeah, that was pretty cool. I like I said earlier, I really like where this is going in regards to him feeling more, I don't want to say at peace, right? But more comfortable, it seems. I like the little bit more relaxed, casual Zeo, less scripted Zeo. So hopefully he starts doing this a lot more in his upcoming videos. Like hopefully that's the feedback he's been getting. So yeah, looking forward to that. Also like the fucking music he's using in the background. It's nice.
Episode 4 ushered in some major changes to the game when it was first introduced in both regions. Story-wise, this was the point where many people felt the game had jumped the shark, as it were. Rather than a continuation of the world building established in the previous episodes, this one is a complete departure. If you're new here, the goal is to provide you, the viewer, with a richer experience by exploring the things that make the PSO2 universe what it is. My name is Zeo, and I'll be your lore keeper. Today, we're going to a very familiar planet. Maybe you've heard of it before. That's right, it's the blue planet we call home, but in a different dimension. So, why are we even there? To answer that question, we need to take a look at what brought us to this point. The year is AP 241. ARX had once again restructured. The Council of Six was disbanded, its members placed in leadership roles throughout the newly formed departments. After the events of 2 years ago, we've taken in quite a bit of corrupted photons and needed to be put on ice. But nap time's over, it's back to work. So what's the task? There's been a surge in suspicious ARX ops as of late, and we're called on to look into the matter. We're sent to Navarius on a recon mission alongside a new ARX op by the name of Hitsugi, but things don't go quite as planned. A shadowy figure attacks, and Hitsugi, well, both of them, are back on Earth. The year is 2028 in Tokyo, Japan, in a parallel universe not terribly different from our Earth in the real world. So everyone's into this game, called Phantasy Star Online 2. By this point in our timeline, that would make it 16 years old, assuming it's still in service by then. Thanks to a mysterious energy called Ether, the Earth of the future has experienced a communications revolution. This Ethernet is essentially an evolution of the internet that we use today in the real world. Ether is transmitted via large structures called Eska towers dotted throughout the globe. So just who's responsible for this technological boon? Meet Mother Core, or Mother Cluster if you prefer. Mother Core is led by a powerful and enigmatic woman known only as Mother. Her disciples each have a naturally high affinity for ether and are among the very best and brightest that Earth has to offer. So why don't we take a look at these disciples, as well as Mother herself. First up is Hagito Anie, disciple of Venus. Hagito is the pretty boy president of the YMT Corporation. They're a popular software company that develops the Eska apps everyone uses, much like the big tech companies in the real world. Thanks to his Emerald tablet, Hagito is able to summon phantasms. Since he's such a military buff, these creatures appear as tanks and helicopters, and of course the battleship Yamato. He's pretty much your typical villain, given to fits of rage whenever things go sideways. His first name is a reference to Hagath, the Olympian spirit of Venus. His last name, Anie, is based off of Haniel, one of the 7 archangels in Jewish lore. Haniel is also associated with Venus. Next up, we have Beitor Zelazny, disciple of Jupiter. Beitor is a famous movie director whose obsession with explosions would make even Michael Bay blush. But unlike Mr. Bay, his explosions cause real-world damage. Beitor controls movie-themed phantasms from zombies to giant monsters. His special power is called SFX, which lets him turn just about anything into a bomb. His name is a reference to Beitor, the Olympian spirit of Jupiter, and sci-fi author Roger Zelazny. Next, we have Oak Miller, disciple of the Sun. Oak is a brilliant scientist and mathematician who brings 100% to bear for Mother. Her genius made her something of an outcast, and Mother was the only one to recognize those gifts. Her phantasms are based off scientific and mathematical theories. Being a brilliant mathematician, she has this 100% goofy verbal tick of speaking in percentages. Her avatar weapon is a giant protractor used to create barriers by manipulating probability. Her name is a reference to Oak, the Olympian spirit of the sun, and American author Henry Miller. Next we have her BFF, Full Janice Laswitz, disciple of the Moon. Full is a world-renowned best-selling author, but her immense intelligence also made her a social outcast. Just like Oak, she pledges her undying fealty to Mother for being the only one to truly accept her talents. Her avatar weapon is a grimoire that lets her manipulate other people's perceptions of space and time. Her last name is a reference to sci-fi author Kurt Laswitz. Now we're coming to the upper echelons of the group, starting with Eratron Tolstoy, disciple of Saturn. Eratron is an accomplished astronaut, historian, and archaeologist, and sports some of the bushiest eyebrows I've ever seen. He met Mother during one of his space missions and became her longtime confidant. Despite misgivings about the actions of the organization and Mother herself, Eratron still retains his undying fealty to her. Apart from that, he's actually a pretty chill guy. He's definitely the least antagonistic of the bunch. Eratron's avatar weapon is Thor's hammer. Just like its mythological counterpart, he can use it to summon lightning, and slamming it on the ground creates shockwaves. His last name is a reference to Russian author and philosopher Leo Tolstoy. Next up, we have Ophiel Herbert, disciple of Mercury. Ophiel is a master surgeon whose skills are said to be godlike. He's also incredibly charismatic and perhaps the most treacherous member of the group. Ophiel has the ability to brainwash people by manipulating the ether in their bodies, something he would do to Kori, turning her against her BFF Hitsugi and Arcs. On the surface, he seems like a nice guy, but the reality is quite the opposite. His avatar weapon is a set of scalpels. His last name is a reference to American sci-fi author Frank Herbert. Now we come to Phaleg Ives, disciple of Mars, and perhaps the most interesting of the bunch. Phaleg is the self-proclaimed apex of human development, not relying on external forces such as photons or ether. She may be a member of Mother Core, but she acts completely on her own. Phaleg is easily one of the strongest characters in the entire multiverse, something she demonstrates time and again. Phaleg is a firm believer in the natural growth of human potential. Of course, she can say that being one of the oldest Earthlings, surviving countless generations of triumph and tragedy. Her last name is a reference to Eve, you know, like Adam and Eve. Before we get to Mother, I should tell you there are some big spoilers coming up. So unless you've finished episode 4 or just don't care, turn back now. Mother is the mysterious leader of Mother Core, and the reason the Earthlings have access to ether in the first place. Remember how the Photoners tried to clone Xion? Well, Mother was their first crack at it. Because she wasn't quite up to scratch, the Photoners cast her into the garbage dump of subspace. Eventually, she'd crash into planet Earth, altering pretty much everything about it. The shattered remnants coalesced into what would become the Earth's moon. Mother would remain dormant for millennia until being discovered by Eritron, so it wouldn't be too far-fetched to say that Eritron is this Earth's equivalent to Neil Armstrong. Mother had nothing but contempt for the Photoners that spurned her. Despite learning the Photoners were extinct, this did nothing to quench the flames of vengeance. In spite of this, she was actually very sweet and caring to her disciples, treating them like a mother would her own children. Because of her background, she was able to empathize with her disciples, many of whom were social rejects themselves. So that PSO2 game everyone loves so much? Well, guess what? It's not as innocent as you might think. It's actually a backdoor into Oracle's dimension used to spy on Arcs, thanks to Ether. In the end, she just wanted to be loved and accepted, just like anyone else, be they human or broken Xion clone. Speaking of Xion, I think it might finally be time to tackle her, and by extension Xiao. As always, thanks for watching. Until next time, farewell.
待っていた。いいな、この表現は認識の相違がある。待たせてしまっただろうか。私の名はシオン。
I'm gonna pause it for a bit so I can type some shit out here if I can. Let's see.
The very one responsible not just for sending us off on this crazy adventure, but the catalyst for everything that would happen before it. If you're new here, the goal is to provide you, the viewer, with a richer experience by exploring the things that make the PSO2 universe what it is. My name's Zeo, and I'll be your lore keeper. Today, we're talking about Xion, and by extension, her younger brother, Xiao. Since these two are so influential, it only seems fitting that we cover them together. We'll be focusing on their origins and the events that helped shape who they are as individuals. We like to give credit to the fine folks who give these characters life through their voices. In the Japanese version, both characters are voiced by the legendary Megumi Ogata. Fans of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Evangelion will no doubt recognize that name. In the English dub, Xion is voiced by Cindy Robinson, and Zach Aguilar lends his voice to Xiao. You might recognize Cindy as the voice of Amy Rose from the Sonic franchise over the past decade. Fans of One Punch Man might recognize Zach as the voice of Genos. To say our time in ARCs has been interesting so far would be an understatement, and this is just our first day. To add to the weirdness, we meet this strange woman who looks like a scientist of some sort. She tells us she's been expecting us, and that her name is Xion. We get the impression that there's more to this lady than meets the eye. For one thing, we're the only ones that can see her. She seems to need our help with something, but won't say what or why exactly. Maybe we've seen each other before. She gives us the Precognizant Divergence Matrix, or Matterboard as it's known in the Japanese version. This was a gameplay mechanic used to advance the story in the first 3 episodes. Each node represented a specific task you had to complete, like finding a specific item or reviewing a certain cutscene. Just as events in our universe have seemingly infinite possibilities, the same could be said for that of Oracle. So the divergence matrix works like this. It collects divergences in the streams of time and manifests new possibilities. So what's our first time-bending task? Going back to the beginning of our qualification exam on Nefarious to rescue an unconscious Matoi. So it turns out we're not the only ones who can see Shion. Matoi follows us to our usual meeting spot and notices someone standing in front of us. This doesn't bother Shion, who tells us that all three of us are connected. Matoi says there's something familiar about her. Our journey leads us to the Sacred Dragon Altar, where Sarah wants to introduce us to someone. His name is Xiao, who introduces himself as Shion's younger brother. He's got a job for us. He wants us to get to the bottom of what Luther's been up to this whole time. Luther wasn't just in charge of the Central Research Division. That was just the cover for his shadow government, using ARCs as his puppets, even the Council of Six. Since Luther has made his move, Shion bids us come to the Oracle Mothership alongside Matoi, where all would be revealed. But those who work in the shadows will do whatever it takes to ensure their deeds aren't brought to the light. No sooner do we arrive, a transmission comes in. The Oracle Mothership is under attack. Regius then appears on a screen and issues the absolute order, Code Abyss. It's a special mind control message broadcast to every ARCS operative to seek and destroy the threat to the Oracle Mothership. But this time, we're the traitor. We're the threat. The entirety of ARCS is brought to bear against us. But Kuna would blow the lid on Luther's schemes and break the order. Now that Luther has made his move, Shion would finally reveal the truth of not just her origins, but everything leading up to this point. Shion recounts the tale of the Photoners, their rise to prominence, and their inevitable downfall. In the beginning, there was a planet made entirely of water. This planet would birth an intelligence powerful enough to calculate everything in the entire universe. The very incarnation of knowledge itself. A little thing called the Akashic Records. Well, not quite. Shion was actually more of a librarian of sorts. She was one of the only entities capable of accessing and managing the records. But that subject is a pretty deep rabbit hole, so we'll save that for another time. So one day this world was visited by those who had come to be known as the Photoners, and they'd give it the name Shion. Shion abandoned the role of being a mere observer, and blessed them with the knowledge of using photons as energy. Shion wasn't alone anymore, and this made her very happy. Shion would assume the form of the first person to come in contact with her. At Shion's request, the Photoners built an outer shell around the planet as part of their mothership. She wanted to be there to see all that they would achieve. So you could say this was a mutually beneficial relationship. The Photoners' sphere of influence would span the entire universe, and they'd eventually try their hand at cloning. So they'd eventually try to clone Shion, and, well, we all know how that turned out. Shion's lamentation of her hand in these events, and her desire to make things right, served as the impetus for enlisting our aid. But Luther awaited us at the core of the mothership alongside Shion's physical form. Luther wanted to merge with Shion, seizing that boundless knowledge for himself. Shion and the remnants of the Photoner spirits would restrain him though, allowing us to escape before the entire mothership was consumed. Now that Shion is gone and Luther has become one with the mothership, you would think this would spell game over for ARCS. Well, Shion had one final trump card. So this is where Xiao comes in. This is where he'd step in and take the reins, bringing with him a brand new mothership from another timeline. There's more to Xiao than just being Shion's younger brother. He's actually another Shion, created by Shion. So perhaps the term son is more appropriate. Xiao has the same omniscience and space-time bending powers as Shion, but his calculation ability isn't quite on par with hers. He's not dialed into the Akashic Records like Shion was. He would use this power to send us back to the point of Elder's awakening to save Zeno, and send us back 10 years to investigate Matoi's origins. Personality-wise, Shion and Xiao are definitely polar opposites. Shion is the more reserved type, and Xiao is the more boisterous, outspoken type. The majority of his social skills were picked up from hanging out with Sarah, effectively making her like a sister to him. Just like siblings in the real world, they are prone to bickering, but do care deeply for one another. Xiao temporarily takes over ARCS, helping Ulk reform its organizational structure, placing the old Council of Six in charge of the new departments. The profound darkness and persona were sealed away in a time loop, but this was a band-aid fix. Once the new administrative backbone was set up, Xiao went back to the mothership to figure out a more permanent solution. Just like Xion, Xiao wanted to make sure that ARX was provided for in his absence, so Xiao created the Sierra network to manage the ARX ships and serve as our personal operator. After the events on Earth, we reunite with Xiao, who seems a little bit different this time. The kid look didn't really fit with his position as Oracle's overseer. He does this to better understand the people around him growing older. Thanks to our exploits on Earth, Xiao is back with a plan for taking back Persona. Xiao manages to replicate the purifying powers of Hitsugi's Ame no Murakumo, but things don't go quite as expected. A black hole opens up, but something's very different about this one. It's at the point where the planet Xion once resided, at the center of the universe no less. On the other side is a fantastical world of castles, dragons, and some familiar faces. But that's outside the scope of our time together today. Don't worry though, we'll see them soon enough. Next time, we're going to the library, but this one doesn't exist in the physical or digital realm. That's right, we're delving into the occult and exploring the Akashic Records. Thanks for watching.
Jesus Christ, the story's crazy. I feel like, even though I'm listening to Zio explain the story, I'm still like missing shit. It's crazy. It's like, I feel like I need like the story and like he's giving me the story of the characters and like I guess the timeline, but I think I need like a summary of, hey, this is what episode 1 is about. This is what episode 2 is about. 3, 4, 5, like just like that. So I mean, this is really helpful because he has a section off on like on these important characters and concepts. I just feel like it would have been easier for me, I guess, to I guess the concepts do matter. I don't know. It's a lot. It's a lot of shit. Really good stuff. Really cool stuff. Again, if you're listening to this, if you're tuning in, check out Zeomantic on YouTube, Zeomantic on his Twitter. I think he goes by Zeomantic on both. For sure, he goes for Zeo. I will post the. Oh shit! It's yours. It's Zeo on the chat. How's it going, man? I was just. I've been like pausing every now and then and making comments on your video, and enjoying it. I'm enjoying it a lot. I'm not sure when you. I think you just tuned in right now. I really enjoy the slow transition to a more relaxed you, a more a more chill you. Like the first few were very scripted. You seem a little tense. Like the voice is great. Like it's not a problem with that. It's more the I could sense that you were, man, I wish I get this. I hope I get this right. That's kind of what it sounds like, right? So I was really cool to see you transition into a more jokey, more like poking fun. You know, hey, smash that like button and subscribe. Help me out here, guys. You know, help the algorithm. So it was really neat to see a little bit of you, a little bit what makes you seeping through that commentary, you know? And then there was obviously the one where you were talking about your projects and stuff like that, or like what your intentions are, you know, why you got into the series, you know, your experience. So I feel like that was a really neat little glimpse of the person behind the voice, you know? Yeah, for sure, man. And I figured that I was saying during the stream, I was like, man, I hope as we go through these videos, we see the evolution of Zeomantic's persona here, of his. I hope we see him discover himself throughout these videos. It will be a nice little journey. But yeah, for sure, man. I mean, these are pretty cool, pretty neat videos. I was saying earlier how I felt bad because what I should have done is set up the stream so that way I can show your video as the main screen and then my gameplay as a little screen. Because you put a lot more effort into the actual editing of the video. I was looking on my second monitor. I'm looking at the actual at the footage you have here, and it's neat. Like it helps me guide a lot. Like the visuals help me guide on like what's going on, the stories, the things you're showing, right? So it's really neat. So I felt like, man, I should have just done that. I should have shown your video, or at least like glimpses of your edits, because they help a lot in the storytelling. And yeah, for sure, I bet it would take a while. I was trying to play, I think it was 2 years ago, I was playing base PSO2, and I was playing the story, and I was like, fuck, this shit's long. Like those cutscenes are long as hell, and I was like, holy shit. And like sometimes not a lot happen, like, you know, effort, you know, credit where credit's due. You know, I guess they cared about the story more, but a lot of nothing was going on sometimes. And then every now and then you get a cool cutscene. But yeah, I really like how you made a nice, concise, digestible video for all this lore. Really nice little bits. Like, you know, we have like 5-7-minute clips, maybe 10 minutes sometimes. So yeah, really, really cool stuff, man. I'm really, really happy for how much you've been taking off lately. I'm not sure if you remember, I stumbled to your videos like a year and a half ago during the pandemic. I was working out and I was like, man, I want to learn more about Phantasy Star, and I don't feel like putting in 100 hours in this game. Let me see if anyone has any content out for this lore. And it was just like compilation videos, right? It was just a bunch of people with like the 8-hour supercut of PSO, and I was like, ah, shit, I don't want to watch this shit. I don't want to read subtitles. But yeah, I was really happy I found your videos, and until recently I was like, oh shit, this is the same guy I was subscribed to. So really cool stuff, man. Really digging it. I'll most definitely start tuning into your streams every now and then when I see it. I don't play a lot, so usually if I log in, I'll start listening to whoever's playing while I'm working or something, or at the gym. So I'll keep tuning in to see if I find you do stuff. I haven't checked your newer stuff, but I mean I will end up doing it because I'm just doing it in chronological order on the playlist. So I'm excited to see what else you got there. No, for sure, man. I appreciate. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm the kind of person who will fucking sit there and listen to a 2-hour video essay on, you know, politics and shit like that, and like, you know, dissecting media or analyzing whatever film, yada yada yada. So I'm cool with long form video as long as it's, you know, good, entertaining, informative. But I also love the short form, you know, concise. Hey, this is what we're gonna talk about. This is how it started. This is the lore on it. This is the what you need to know. You know, a little bit of history, and this is where we at right now with it. I mean, that's fine too. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I hope more people actually appreciate the work you're doing, because there's not that much Phantasy Star content out there. It's not a huge franchise outside of Japan. So if you don't mind, Zeo, I will continue playing this stuff. You can feel free to stay here and listen and watch me listen to you, or listen to me listen to you, if you want to stay around. Let's see what you got here. I'm sure there's a timeline where it is dominant JRPG franchise opposed to Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy, right? Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I like Final Fantasy for what it is. I like Dragon Quest for what it is. I like Dragon Quest more for nostalgia reasons, and I'm a sucker for Dragon Ball, so like the art style is like, oh, I'm watching Dragon Ball, thanks, you know? So I like it for that, and I grew up with the cartoon, with the Daiboken cartoon, which got remade recently, and it's on Hulu if you have Hulu. But yeah, I mean, I'm more of a Dragon Quest fan. It has a really good soundtrack. I like it more. I like the design more. Not much of a Final Fantasy head, but I like PSO in regards to I like the aesthetic. I was cool. It was like a space JRPG, which we don't really see that much. Oh, you've been watching Dino Daiboken? You've been watching Dragon Quest? If you've been watching Dragon Quest, man, I got it. It's great. I'm not sure if this is your first time watching it. Oh shit, man, it's so good. I love it. I haven't caught up with it yet. I mean, I watched the old anime a long time ago when I was little. It got canceled. I'm not sure how far you are, so I really don't want to spoil anything, but it got canceled during the Baran fight. And yeah, I was excited to watch it completely. I read it a couple of years ago, like 6-7 years ago. I read the whole thing, and I was blown away by the tropes, you know, the classic shonen shit, like the plot twist. But yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool shit. It gets some parts are really like cookie cutter, you know, classic shonen. But at the time, I mean, that shit was great, you know, because it's older, you know, it hasn't been done that much. Yeah, I like Dragon Quest. The OST is really nice. Yeah, I wish it had more classic. I think what they were going for is they do have some soundtracks from the classic one. And or they have like a remixed version of the classics, right? I think that's what it is. They're using a lot. I'm not sure if the old cartoon used it more, but the only reason I knew Dragon Quest songs in general is because I watched the old anime. Like it still gives me goosebumps. It's a really good theme. They have really good theme songs. Yeah, the only Dragon Quest I've actually never played an official Dragon Quest title. I just know the gimmicks and stuff like that because of the fucking old anime. The only Dragon Quest thing I played was Rocket Slime. Dragon Quest Rocket Slime, and that shit was amazing. I'm not sure if you played Rocket Slime. It's great. I recommend it. It's a fun little game where you play as a slime and you just you play as a slime and you have to like capture items and monsters and feed it to your tower, and your tower operates like a giant mech, and you fight other monsters like that. It's crazy. It's a crazy game. I recommend it. Check it. It's for DS. You might be able to emulate it, obviously. Most definitely worth a play. Super fun. Let me see. Might as well farm for the scales. Let's see. All right. Yeah, man, Dragon Quest is lit. Like the cartoon is lit. It's great. Love it. I would say check out the OVAs, but they're kind of whack. If you just want more Dragon Quest media, I guess check out the OVAs. They're fine. It's very much cookie cutter shonen OVA, where it's like, oh, movie only bad guy shows up. What should we do? And then signature finisher, story ends. Okay, cool. Like no substance, as far as I recall. Anyway, I haven't watched it in a long time. Could be different now. Who knows? Might be able to view it on under a different lens. But yeah. Alright, I'm gonna press play and keep listening to your stuff and hopefully not getting lost.
And remember, to thine own self be true.
Also, I know it might be really hard for you to listen to your own voice. I mean, that's the thing for me. I hate listening to my own voice. I'm not sure if you're already over that hurdle.
If you will, for
but if you are, congrats, man, because it takes power.
Archived and cataloged in one place, not just on the historical macro level, but on the personal micro level. And we're not talking about a room full of books or a network of computer servers here. Like always, the goal here is to provide you, the viewer, with a richer experience by exploring the things that make the PSO2 universe what it is.
Nice, good shit, dude.
My name's Zeo, and I'll be your lore keeper. Today, we're going to a very special library. One that isn't bound by municipal budget constraints or the whims of censorious tech oligarchs and government.
Like that, like the comment that you make there about the libraries, right? And like, oh yeah, libraries, not like the ones we got here where it's like super capitalist. Fuck them. Like I like the little tidbits like that. It's neat. I like it. It's great. Keep it up.
Grab your library cards because we're paying a visit to the Multiverse's library, the Akashic Records. Unlike previous entries, we'll be spending most of our time together out of universe. This isn't a very familiar topic in Western philosophical and religious circles. This is more of an expository trip through the occult and Eastern mysticism than anything else. Longtime fans of this channel already know what time it is. We like to examine any parallels that might exist in the real world, be it technological or philosophical. So we all know what records are, but what does that word Akashic mean? It's not a word that comes up in our daily vocabulary. The term Akashic comes from the 5,000-year-old Sanskrit word Akasha, meaning ether, sky, or space, the mystical fifth element from which all others originate, the source of material reality. It's also spelled Akash or Akasa. Doesn't this sound like something Oracle uses? Like photons, maybe?
It's all good, man.
Alma points this out to
All
us.
good.
The modern concept was first introduced in the late 19th century with the teachings of Theosophy by Russian philosopher Helena Blavatsky. She and a handful of others established the Theosophical Society in New York
I
City.
can
to
find
further
more
advance its
common
teachings.
ground with
It's an
libertarian than
esoteric
anything,
belief
to be
system that
honest.
incorporates
At least, well,
philosophical tenets
as
from
opposed to
Eastern
someone
religions like
ultra conservative,
Buddhism.
I
Their core
guess.
belief is that there's no religion higher than truth. Blavatsky described the records as indestructible tablets found within the astral light. She was said to have acquired this ability to access this information via clairvoyance and astral projection. I think we've met someone like that before. The term Akashic Record, though, was coined by Alfred Percy Sinnett in his book Esoteric Buddhism, published in 1883. The records aren't just a library of events throughout the universe, though. It goes even deeper than that. They're a collection of all universal events, thoughts, words, emotion, and intent ever to have occurred in the past, present, or future in terms of all entities and life forms, not just humans. The notion of a cosmic repository of information goes back even farther than that, though. Hindu scriptures speak of the god sage Narada, who was depicted as a traveling musician and storyteller. He had the supernatural ability of accessing a hidden domain that most humans are completely unaware of, the realm of cosmic knowledge. This also sounds like someone we know. The first scientific approach to this concept was proposed by Dr. J.C.R. Licklider in 1960. He called it the Intergalactic Computer Network. This served as the inspiration for ARPANET, which evolved into the internet that we use today. With that out of the way, let's talk about that world on the other side of the black hole. We'll just be taking a look at it from the 30,000-foot view here. I'll still add the obligatory spoiler check.
Are you from, are you in the United States? Or are you in some European country? Just out of curiosity. You say? I don't know. I mean, if you view yourself, I mean, I don't want to get, I guess, political on stream, I guess, but I mean, if you view yourself, shit, I want to lose my train of thought. If you view yourself more slightly right of center, but at the same time call yourself more of a libertarian, I think you might be, you know, more center-y than you think, or more left of center than you think, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I'm not saying it's a good thing, I'm just saying American centrism is fairly right-leaning compared to other countries. You know, I'm just not saying you're wrong, it's just an observation that I wanted to make. I don't know, I find it usually, I don't know, I feel like it is common to think to want to identify as centrist, to say, hey, I'm not like this extreme or the other extreme, but what you might think as centrism is not what it's currently the actual centrist. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, anyway, yeah. So, I mean, I would like to think most of the younger crowd who accepts people's, you know, liberties and respects choices and all that kind of stuff finds themselves a lot more lefty than they think, because they have a different perception of what leftism is. Anyway, that's it. That's it for my political corner. I know. I mean, younger as in, like, my bad. I remember you're not that much older than me. I meant younger. I mean, hell, I feel young as shit. I'm pretty sure you do too, because you're hip with the cool kids and you play Sega games that no one plays. It's only us old folk maintain these franchises alive with our hard-earned money. But yeah, I meant younger, like, you know, around my age. I mean, I would still consider you young, not younger, I guess, just, you know, not. I would guess we're in the millennial category, not on the boomer, right? So I would consider anyone younger than a boomer as younger when I talk about politics, I guess. I like weed and drink whiskey too. There you go. You got, there you go, libertarian as fuck. like weed, whiskey, and my guns, and there you go. Kind of between next. Yeah, I figure. Yeah, for sure, man. That's kind of. I'm more on the slightly younger side, more millennial adjacent, you could say. Not by much, so I can for sure identify with a lot of your views. I would say maybe, or agree. I gotcha.
Here. Those who wish to experience the story organically are advised to turn away now. This world, dubbed Omega by Alma, is the physical manifestation of the Akashic Records. Definitely a far cry from the locales we've visited in the past. It feels like something out of a storybook, a world of knights, castles, dragons, and magic. A convoluted dream of the Akashic Records according to Alma. Since the Akashic Records catalog events in the universe ad infinitum, the result is a convoluted melting pot of cultures and eras past. Most notable among Omega's inhabitants are some familiar faces from our exploits in Oracle's dimension, such as Luther and Gedemholt. We meet a young woman named Harriet, who is the princess of a kingdom called Quento. Harriet leads a revolutionary force against her uncle the king, whose troops were pursuing her just as we arrived. At some point, Harriet tells us about these mysterious flowers called ephemera that showed up some time ago. Thanks to these ephemera, the people of Omega are afforded great magical power at the cost of their sanity over time. Much like the narcotics in our world, the use of ephemera is incredibly addictive. Long-term usage will turn even the kindest of souls into absolute monsters. Each of the 4 nations use ephemera for their own school of magic. One of the most notable uses was conjuring massive living fortresses called Castrum Demonica. These were developed by Harriet's older brother Luther and helped revolutionize the face of warfare on Omega. Another notable case is the legendary Crimson Fellworm, one of the most powerful beings on Omega. This abomination is actually a massive ephemera taking the form of a dragon. So what does a cosmic library dream if a cosmic library could dream? The countless tales of adventures, past, present, and future.
Is this a section of the game? I'm not watching the video right now because I blocked it by accident. But is this a section of the game that gets more medieval? Let me see if I can tab out. Yeah. I think it is. Oh yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, that shit was weird. When I was, I think this was a part of when I was playing base PSO2. Where I said, fuck it. Don't care about this story. Don't know what the fuck is going on anymore. I give up. And I was just like playing different content. Because at first I was excluding myself from content because I didn't want to get spoiled. Then I was like, fuck it. I'll just play whatever. And I was like, what the fuck? Where am I? What is this fucking castle looking shit and medieval shit, like fantasy? So it looked cool as shit. I just had no context of why the fuck I'm here. Why am I in Tokyo? What the fuck is going on? But yeah, okay, cool. Now, I mean, the music gave it away, but yeah, cool.
This abomination is actually a massive ephemera taking the form of a dragon. So what does a cosmic library dream if a cosmic library could dream? The countless tales of adventures, past, present, and future.
Was that a reference of, was that last line of what can they dream a reference to what do electric sheep dream of? Was that on purpose, or is that just was it just a coincidence? I want to know now. I'm gonna make it my mission to pick up every single reference you throw in here now. Oh, okay. I thought you were making a reference to like that book.
Future. Next time, there's a girl I'd like you to meet. Maybe you've met her before. The first lady of RPGs in a franchise that was ahead of its time. Her name? Elise Landale. As always, thanks for watching, and remember, to thine own self be true. Until next time, farewell. How do you pay homage to your franchise during a milestone anniversary? Create a parallel world featuring deceased characters from your current entry, and throw in a few blasts from the past for good measure. Once again, we're about our business of providing you, the viewer, with a richer experience by exploring the things that make the PSO2 universe what it is. My name's Zeo, and I'll be your lore keeper. Today, Elise Landale, the Sword Maiden of Quento, takes
Yeah,
the
it does sound cool.
spotlight.
It does.
Longtime fans of the franchise may already recognize that name, but if you don't, well, Zeo's gonna give you a little history lesson. Let's go all the way back to the year
Oh shit,
1987.
wrong one.
Yeah, here goes Zeo on another expository trip. Don't lie, you know you love it. 1987 was a seminal year for gaming and pop culture on both sides of the Pacific. The global backbone for the internet was taking shape, but it would still be a couple years before its commercial rollout. The video game industry was well into its renaissance here in the West, with Nintendo having an iron grip on the console market. 1987 would give root to a number of beloved franchises. This is the year that gave us Metal Gear, Mega Man, Street Fighter, and one other popular JRPG franchise. Sega would release Phantasy Star in December of 1987, just 2 days after Final Fantasy. North American and European audiences would get it the following year. Phantasy Star would buck the medieval swords and sorcery trend of other RPGs in favor of a futuristic setting complete with space travel and lightsabers. It was also one of the first games to have a female protagonist. Phantasy Star was definitely ahead of its time both in terms of presentation and storytelling. The team would include Rieko Kodama and Yuji Naka, both of whom would go on to produce Sonic the Hedgehog. The story of Phantasy Star follows Elise Landale, or Elisa if you prefer, on her...
Did Yuji Naka did character design for Yeah, I could tell, like, I was you had a lot of fun making this one. Yeah, I was thinking about it. I was like, oh, that's cool. This is some neat lore. Did Yuji Naka work on the character creation for Phantasy Star for the OG, or did they do soundtrack stuff? I think if I remember correctly, they do the character for design also for Sonic, right?
Quest to avenge her fallen brother Nero and liberate the Algol solar system from the tyrannical King Lassic. I only bring this up because Episode 5 made its debut in Japan in July of 2017. Not only did this year mark PSO2's 5th year in service, but also the franchise's 30th anniversary. On top of that, we have a number of people experiencing the Phantasy Star franchise for the first time thanks to PSO2. Episode 5 was set in the world of Omega, which featured a number of familiar names and faces.
セガはロールプレイングゲームも変えてしまうファンタシースターかつてない驚異のグラフィック壮大な SF ストーリーその秘密は4メガファンタシースター
Now let's take a look at Elise as she appears in PSO2. As always, we like to give a shout out to the talented people who bring life to these characters through their voices. Elise is voiced by Sumi Shimamoto in the Japanese version. Fans of Hayao Miyazaki might recognize that name. Rachel Robinson lends her voice to the English dub. Final Fantasy XIII fans might recognize her as the voice of Erba Yun Fang. Of course, I'll add in the obligatory spoiler check here. Those who wish to experience the story organically are advised to turn back now. Elise Landale is part of a long line of sword maidens from the Kingdom of Quento. They are the ones to whom the legendary Laconium sword is passed down. Their main task is to slay the Crimson Fellworm and seal up its power should the fiend ever return. Luther and Harriet recount the tale of how Quento was founded.
Nice. The commercial for the
tale of
original one. Yeah, I
legendary
saw that. It was really
heroine
cool.
and her companions
I
who had slain the
I love those old commercials. The Japanese commercials were really cool. Like I remember the ones for Bomberman were really tight. The Street Fighter ones were really cool. The what other one had I think the Zelda ones were pretty cool too. Like the old Zelda commercials were pretty cool. Yeah, all the old commercials are pretty tight.
the Crimson Fellworm and built a castle atop its remains to seal it up. Luther and Harriet would be the descendants of these companions. Since Elise isn't part of that royal bloodline, she remains politically neutral. Thanks to our...
I just really enjoyed how it was essentially just fucking grown-ass people cosplaying, and you would think, man, this would be a really cool live-action show. Why don't they do this? That's what I always thought. I was like, man, this would be... I would pay money to watch this show. Thank you.
help, Harriet's revolutionary force is able to take down the Castrum Demonicus throughout the land. This didn't sit well with King Lutz, though. The Castrums were a major part of Quento's defensive apparatus. He would seek his niece, the Sword Maiden's counsel, but she would remain steadfast in her neutrality. Why was the previous king so vehemently opposed to using ephemera? Elise would meet with Harriet's group to ascertain their intentions. She's understandably conflicted after hearing what Luther and Harriet had to say about her esteemed uncle. How could one so kind and noble fall so far into madness? But their meeting was cut short when a castrum was called forth near the camp. It was clear that Lutz's abuse of ephemera had gone too far, and it was time for an intervention. The revolutionary force would make its way to the castle, where Lutz would make his last stand. With Lutz now gone, it was time for Quento to fill the power vacuum and move forward. But they had another problem to deal with. The Crimson Fellworm was back. But this one was different. Thanks to Elmir, the soul of the departed King Lutz would merge with the dragon, but this supercharged abomination was too much for even the mighty Sword Maiden to handle. Luther would absorb the ephemera powering the fiend, allowing for it to be sealed up. This would in turn set Lutz's soul free. He was no longer a slave to the ephemera that twisted his mind and his spirit. Elise would stay behind to watch over the seal should the Crimson Menace ever return. While the Elise on Omega and her counterpart on Algol have a number of similarities, there are some key differences here though. Both women sought to dethrone a tyrannical ruler, but for very different reasons. Elise from Algol wanted to avenge her brother Nero, who was murdered at the behest of King Lassic. Elise on Omega, however, was the niece of King Lutz, who became mentally unstable as a result of his prolonged ephemera abuse. Both men were considered good and honorable before being corrupted by the dark powers in their respective worlds. There's also the Laconium sword and the Crimson Fellworm. The sword was handed down through Elise's family, and its main purpose was to subdue the dragon if it should ever come back. In the original Phantasy Star, there was a red dragon that guarded the Laconian sword, which was considered one of the strongest weapons in the game. And finally, we have Elise versus Dark Falls. Since we're the stars of this show called PSO2, Elise takes on a supporting role this time around. She does help us punch through hordes of supernaturals and false spawn as we make our final push to save Harriet from the clutches of Elmir, who is a personification of Dark Falls. All in all, I think this was an interesting homage to the heroine of the Algol solar system. Some might feel differently, and that's okay. Like what you just watched? Well, you know what to do. As always, thanks for watching. And remember, to thine own self be true. Until next time, farewell. Hello everyone, and welcome to Ark's Armoire, a brand new series about the backgrounds of some of the more interesting weapons within the PSO2 universe. We'll be examining the lore of these items not just in PSO2, but also within the Phantasy Star franchise, as well as the real-world stories upon which they're based. You know who I am, but if you don't, my name's Zeo, and I'll be your lore keeper.
So it seems to me that episode 5 was a giant fan wank, right? It was just a big ol' hey, let's bring back this old shit that people fondly remember and make like a remix episode where we just go in there and have fun and relive a battle or help out some people from the past. That's what it sounds like. And I mean, that's cool. That's cool. I like it. I dig it. I dig it. And it seems to me that I think what we're jumping into right now with these videos is gonna be you know, the real life references of objects or weapons that we use here in Phantasy Star lore, right? Or like the real life equivalent where it got the inspiration from. That's what it sounds like.
We'll start off with a bit of a double feature of sorts. Today, we'll be discussing the Ame no Habakiri, and by extension, the Ame no Murakumo, both wielded by Hitsugi Yasaka. Just as a heads up, there will be some spoilers for events in episode 4 coming up later on. I'll let you know once we get to that point. The origins of these blades can be traced all the way back to the Japanese creation myth, the Tenchi Kaibyaku, or the creation of heaven and earth. In the beginning, the universe was shapeless and chaotic. Eventually, the lighter particles would rise up to form the heavens. The heavier matter made up the earth. The two deities Izanagi and Izanami are said to be the ones responsible for the creation of Japan. Izanagi would take their bejeweled spear and dip it into the waters below. When he pulled the spear back up, the water that dripped off of it would form the island of Onogoro, where the two would make their home. These two would create the next generation of deities, representing all the natural features of Japan. Izanami would give birth to Kagutsuchi, the fire god, but she was badly burned in the process and didn't survive. A furious Izanagi would subsequently behead the baby boy. Izanami was gone, and a grief-stricken Izanagi would follow her into the underworld, Yomi, to bring her back. One thing about the underworld is that it's absolute darkness in there. Izanami would tell him that she wasn't ready to go back yet. Her bond with Yomi was too strong though. She had to make a deal with the gods of the underworld to facilitate her release. Izanami has him promise her that he wouldn't look at her until the time was right. Izanagi didn't listen, of course. He breaks off part of his comb and lights it up like a torch. A furious Izanami would send hordes of demons after Izanagi, forcing him to retreat. Once he made it outside, Izanagi sealed up the entrance with a giant boulder. Izanagi felt unclean because of his contact with the dead, so he took a bath to purify himself. The sun goddess Amaterasu appeared from his left eye, the moon god Tsukuyomi came from his right eye, and Susanoo, the god of the seas, came out of his nose. Susanoo is going to be the main focus here. The god of storms, and the strongest swordsman of all the gods, was known for being something of a trickster though. The heavens were a place of tranquility, and a little bit too boring for his tastes. At some point, he had a feud with his sister Amaterasu, and he was banished to the earth. Susanoo finds himself in Izumo, where he meets a grieving elderly couple along with their daughter. They have a bit of a snake problem here. We're not talking about your average garden snake here though. This one has 8 heads and a penchant for snacking on young maidens. The fearsome 8-headed serpent,
the Orochi.
Yamata no Orochi. The fiend had already consumed 7 of their daughters and was coming for the 8th. Susanoo meets this 8th daughter, Kushinada, and falls in love with her. Susanoo sizes up the creature.
Yo, I love me some lore talk. This is why I started watching your videos, because I'm already a sucker for shit like this. So I'm like, oh yeah, we're talking about some early fucking Nihon lore. That's what I'm talking about. Great, good shit. I'm digging this. I know most of this. I know the gist of most of this. I'm a little bit rusty though, but I do like this shit. I appreciate a nice little refresher course on weeb history, the OG weeb facts here. One second. Let me find a safe place to be. Okay. I'm done with the daily. I need to do my limited time ones, but I just don't want to fucking do this shit because it's so boring. I gotta clear Battle Nia. I haven't done it. The fuck is a Battle Nia quest? I forgot. Okay. One second. Be right back. I gotta go to the restroom and then gotta get something to wake myself up. Be right back. All right, we're back. Let's see. Go back to listening to Zeomantic's video. I think the topic we left on is the creation of Japan. The story of Ame no Murakumo. If I remember correctly. Let's see. No, don't remember who Murakumo is. I think we left off on the Susanoo stuff after he gets created from Izanagi. I'll rewind a little bit just to refresh.
Meets this 8th daughter, Kushinada, and falls in love with her. Susanoo sizes up the creature and quickly realizes that brute force just isn't going to win the day here. He needed to fall back and devise a plan to cripple the fiend somehow. Susanoo agrees to help in exchange for Kushinada's hand in marriage. So what's the plan? Oh, it's real simple. Just get him drunk. Your normal-sized bottle of booze wasn't going to cut it here with a giant 8-headed serpent. So 8 huge vats of sake were set up. Susanoo tells Orochi that they're an aperitif of sorts. Orochi takes the bait and starts drinking. So once the serpent was sufficiently soused and sleepy, it was time for Susanoo to get to work. He then proceeds to lop off each of the 8 heads with his sword, dubbed Ame no Habakiri, or Heavenly Snake Slayer if you prefer. The storm god notices something interesting in one of the tails. He finds a sword that he would call Ame no Murakumo, or Gathering Clouds of the Heavens. Susanoo takes this sword back to the heavens as a peace offering for his sister Amaterasu. Generations later, the sword ends up in the hands of the high priestess of the Issei shrine, Yamato Hime. She lends the sword to her nephew, Yamato Takeru, who was sent eastward at the behest of his father, Emperor Keiko. One day, Prince Yamato was lured into an open grassy field during a hunting expedition. Fiery arrows rained down and set the nearby grass ablaze. The panicked prince desperately cut away at the surrounding grass in the hopes of hindering the oncoming flames. But something was different here. The prince noticed the wind blew whichever direction he swung his sword. Auntie Hime had given him another gift before he departed, a bag of flint stones. Being the resourceful type, Prince Yamato struck the stones together, igniting the surrounding foliage. He then swung his sword, fanning the flames and pushing them back towards his would-be assassins. Here's where the sword gets the name Kusanagi, or grass cutter. Along with the jewel and the mirror, the sword is one of the 3 imperial regalia. These holy relics are presented to a new emperor whenever they take the throne. Traditionally, they symbolize the divinity of the imperial bloodline. So now we arrive at the spoiler check. As always, if you want to experience the story organically, turn back now. Mother was interested in Al, so she sends Haggith after him. Al and Hitsugi encounter Haggith, who summons a group of phantasms with his emerald tablet. Hitsugi, not wanting things to end this way, manifests an avatar arm of her own, the Ame no Habakiri. At some point, though, the sword breaks when Hitsugi squares off against a...
Is this where the Braver class was introduced? Like, they did this whole thing, and this is like, hey, Braver class, big weeb energy. We got it from our own Japanese lore, motherfuckers. This is how we're gonna shoehorn in the samurai sword. Eat a dick. I hope this is how they did it, because that'll be funny.
Brainwashed Kori. Later on, though, she manifests a new avatar arm, the Ame no Murakumo, complete with a
Okay,
change of
cool.
clothes. The avatar weapons are a manifestation of the user's imaginations and desires. In Hitsugi's case, she wanted to protect those she cared about and was a huge fan of Japanese mythology. Believe it or not, these 2 swords were not katanas, despite their countless depictions as such over the years. The predecessors to the katanas that we know didn't start showing up until around the 12th century. If you enjoyed what you just watched, you know the routine. And of course, share with your friends. After all, sharing is caring, right? As always, thanks for watching. And remember, to thine own self be true. Until next time, farewell. Hello everyone, and welcome to Ark's Armoire, a series about the backgrounds of some of the more interesting weapons in the PSO2 universe. We'll be examining the lore of these items not just within PSO2, but also within the Phantasy Star franchise in general, as well as the fascinating real-world stories upon which they're based. My name's Zeo, and I'll be your lore keeper. Balmung Notung Graham. 3 names for what is perhaps one of the most famous swords in Western culture, right up there with Excalibur and Kalidbolg. The legend of Graham is tied to the Volsunga saga, 13th century Icelandic poem chronicling the rise and the fall of the Volsung clan. The story is recounted in the anonymously penned Song of the Nibelung, and centuries later in Richard.
Yo, we going with Norse shit now? This is great. This is beautiful, Zeo. I love it. Love it. Weeb lore. And we got the good old Norse lore. There we go. Love it.
Wagner's operatic opus, The Ring of the Nibelung. In Song of the Nibelung, the sword is called Balmung, but in Wagner's piece, its name is Notung. Our story begins with a man named Sigmund who is the son of Volsung. One day at the wedding feast for his sister Signy, a mysterious one-eyed vagrant carrying a beautiful sword comes on the scene. The old man takes the sword and thrusts it into a tree in the middle of the hall. He then makes the proclamation, "The man who pulls this sword from the trunk shall receive it from me as a gift, and shall wield no finer sword." There's more to this old man than meets the eye. The one-eyed vagrant getup was a favorite disguise of the Norse god Odin. Graham was forged by the legendary blacksmith Wayland, who also made such blades as Caliburn, Almus, and Durandal. Graham was Odin's weapon of choice for many years, so you could say that his proclamation at the tree had some merit behind it. Odin leaves, and every man at the feast tries their hand at pulling the sword out. The only one who manages to remove the blade is Sigmund. Sigurd, the king of nearby Gotland, and Sigmund's brother-in-law, is jealous. So he offers to buy the sword for an obscene amount of gold. Sigmund turns him down, but the king is not one to take no for an answer. Sometime later, Sigurd invites Sigmund and the rest of the family to visit Gotland, but of course this was a trap. Volsung is murdered, and the rest of the family gets sent to prison. Signy hangs onto the sword and secretly gives it back to her brother, who would use it to avenge Volsung and reclaim their lands. Decades later, Sigmund encounters the old man again. Odin challenges Sigmund and breaks Graham into pieces in what would be his final battle. In his dying breaths, Sigmund bequeaths the broken sword to his unborn son, Sigurd, who modern Germans know as their ancestor hero, Siegfried. Sigurd's mother would remarry a king, and Sigurd would become the foster son of the king's blacksmith, Regin. Regin's father Hreidmar had come into possession of a ring called the Anvaranot that allowed the user to produce an unlimited amount of gold. The ring was cursed by its creator Andvari after it was stolen by Loki along with his treasure. The first recipient of this ring was none other than Hreidmar. We know about the dragon Fafnir, but here's the plot twist. You see, Fafnir wasn't always a dragon. He used to be a dwarf just like his father Hreidmar and his brother Regin. Fafnir killed his father and took possession of the Anvaranot, which corrupted his mind and turned him into the fearsome, greedy dragon that we know. Regin, of course, wanted the ring, denied to him by his brother, so he enlisted Sigurd's aid with the promise of copious amounts of gold. Sigurd didn't really care about that though. He wanted to fight a dragon, but for different reasons. No ordinary blade was up to the task of piercing the hide of a mighty dragon though. Sigurd agrees to this task, but on one condition, that Regin make him a sword capable of slaying such a fiend. The first 2 swords weren't quite up to snuff, so Sigurd brings the pieces of his father's sword Graham. Regin, despite his extensive skill in metallurgy, was unable to do anything, so a frustrated Sigurd takes over and despite his lack of experience, actually makes some progress. Once he was finished, Sigurd tested the blade against the anvil just like the last 2, but this time it was the anvil that broke. With this newly reforged Graham, Sigurd slew the dragon and ate his heart. Sigurd, having tasted Fafnir's blood during the cooking process, gained the knowledge of the speech of birds. The birds tip him off to Regin's plan to double-cross him. In a preemptive strike, Sigurd decapitates his foster father. Although I would have liked to play portions of Wagner's opera for you, unfortunately those trigger YouTube's Content ID system. Whenever that happens, the record companies take all the ad revenue that might have gone to you. In PSO2, we see both Graham and Balmung, but they're both very different in terms of background and appearance. Graham was the avatar arm of Hitsugi's friend Kori Washinomiya. It was born out of Kori's jealousy and desire to destroy anything and everything in her way. The sword's dark and twisted appearance is likely a reflection of this. Balmung, on the other hand, is a wand and a more accurate depiction of the weapon appearance-wise. In the Old Norse tales, it's always depicted as a gleaming gold and white sword, much like what you see here. The sword has been referenced in countless RPGs throughout the years under all three names. Gram and Balmung appear in Final Fantasy XI, and Notung is the dark.
Oh, once I'm gonna pause this because I don't want to miss this shit. I've been playing because I'm like, oh, this is cool. Give me 1 second. Think when. I was thinking. Quintel. That cuckoo right here. Write this down. I'm gonna forget. Trying to get these fucking these weeklies done. These limited time, not the weekly, but limited time. Because I'm gonna forget if I don't do them right now. Let's see. I need a cuckoo 40 plus. Cuckoo at least 40. Need a Synquem. I need to reach battle power. Alright. Let's think now. Do I have those weapons? Yeah, I got no cuckoos with a Fixa. I mean, I kind of wanted to just use a Fixa cuckoo, to be honest. Might as well use a sync one, right? My logic was that if I'm going to invest plus forwarding a fucking weapon, might as well use one that has a Fixa on it. That's my logic, right? Machine guns. Let me check what's the Synquem's gimmick. Synquem machine guns. Oh, Synquem is the one that reduces PP consumption for every different type of shit. Okay. They're expensive as shit. Okay. I could probably sell this motherfucker. Good money. Okay. Now let's check out the other one. You have Cuckoo. I think Cuckoo is just the good on the on that one mode, right? Let me see how much you're selling it for.
All right, time to get buff.
Right
Come
here.
back anytime you
don't sell for that much. They're just trying to get rid of it. That's cool. Whatever. Whatever. Cuckoo. Yeah, ain't no one wants this shit. No one wants this shit. Oh wow, okay. Mm-hmm. How much is the rod? Yo, rods are expensive, dude. Like way more expensive. Everyone trying to get that fucking rod life. That's cool. Whatever. It'd be like that, man. Holy shit. This is insane. Fuck that. Fuck that. Try hards, man. That's cool. What about the boots? Boots. Boots too. Okay. Good look at. Bow, launcher, saber. Here. Wand. Okay.
Come again.
Alright, time to get buff.
Oh, just make the guns. Fuck it. Alright, cool. I just gotta enhance my silver prims. Wonder if there's an event going on. So that way I don't have to waste so many materials. Are we listening to the lore while this is going on?
Dark Knight Animal Weapon in Final Fantasy XIV. Well, that about does it for today's Arcs Armoire. If you want to learn more about these tales, feel free to check them out for yourself. If you enjoyed this, you know the routine. And of course, share this with your big sword-loving edgelord friends. After all, sharing is caring, right? As always, thank you so much for watching. And remember, to thine own self be true. Until next time, farewell. Every time a franchise is brought to another region, it always seems like one or more pieces of companion content don't make the cut. PSO2, of course, is no exception to that rule. Examining some of those cut elements is all part of that goal here, providing you, the viewer, with a richer PSO2 experience. My name's Zeo, and I'll be your lore keeper. So tell me, do you know who this girl is? No? Okay, well, how about her? Maybe you've seen her before? That one Phantasy Star phone game that did make it over here, perhaps? So I'm sure you've seen a few of these outfits in AC scratches on the global servers, and I'm sure you're curious as to their origins. These are called weaponoids, They're from Phantasy Star Online 2S, a phone game and companion app for PSO2 in Japan. PSO2S hit the Japanese market in spring of 2014 for iOS and Android devices. Players logged into the game with their existing PSO2 account, which let them do things like feed their megs, manage their shops, or buy AC on the go. There were also a number of items here that you couldn't get in PSO2 proper. It also gave players access to an extra 100 slots of storage space. The game's still in service as of this recording, but it might not be around anymore if you're watching this after the release of New Genesis. This was the easiest way for players outside Japan to buy AC. There was a time when Sega's payment processor rejected foreign credit cards. Now let me tell you about what we had to do before that. We had to resort to prepaid options, the most foreigner-friendly being web money. So if we wanted AC, we either needed a friend in Japan to hook us up, or we had to use a middleman like PlayAsia or Pseudocorp. Not only were we at the mercy of the exchange rate, but also the obscene markup these services charged. PSO2 went live in July of 2012. The exchange rate at the time was around 80 yen to the US dollar. The last time it got that low was sometime in the mid-90s. So with that exchange rate, coupled with the middleman markup, 3000 AC was just over 40 US dollars. The importer struggle was very real. The original concept for PSO2S was a modified port of the PC version, but that idea was ultimately scrapped. Story-wise, PSO2S takes place in the same universe as PSO2 proper, but isn't part of the main story. The S in PSO2S means essence. A renowned scientist at the Central Research Division by the name of Dr. Cohen developed a special technology called the chip system. These chips allow ARC's operatives to harness the essence of their equipment to further aid them in combat. The weaponoids were the next evolution of the Good Doctor's research. As their name would suggest, they're the personified versions of popular ARC's weapons. They have their own unique designs and personalities and can manifest themselves outside their chips. They aren't the most photon efficient though. The manifestation process required a substantial amount of photons. Weaponoids were initially uncontrollable when they were first created. Their volatile nature led them to go on a murderous rampage. It didn't matter if you were friend or foe. If you had the misfortune of encountering one, you were a victim too. The weaponoids were developed in a top-secret lab called the EMA facility, so the lab blows up, killing all but one, a scientist by the name of Zachard. Our girl Jean here will be the main focus. If you played Idola, you might recognize her as a crossover character. Her name is pronounced Gene in Japanese media, a reference to the word Genesis. We meet Jean as a third-generation ARC's operative just like us. She's nice and outgoing, but she's known for tiring out easily in combat because of how her body handles photons. Intense heat only seems to make this worse, something we notice while traveling with her in Amduskia's volcanic region. We're given the task of investigating the lab incident that killed a grand total of 208,893 ARC staff. That's about the size of some cities. Our search for answers leads us all the way to Zachard, who was the sole survivor of the incident. Of course he survived, cause he's the one who made the thing go boom in the first place. He blew up the facility because he didn't want to see the weaponoids used for nefarious purposes. Before Zachard trashed the facility, he took Jean and gave her fake memories of her parents dying in the explosion. There's something special about Jean, as you might have guessed. Jean's also a weaponoid. A very special, albeit incomplete one at that. Remember what I said about Genesis? She's one half of a cosmogenic arm, or a Genesis weapon as they're called in Japan. Many other weaponoids are known to exist, each with their own unique design and backstory. Although fragments of PSO2S exist within PSO2 Global, it's safe to assume that it shall forever remain lost in localization. So now we come to the part where I ask you to do all the YouTube-y stuff that helps get this out in front of more people. YouTube-y? Is that even a word? I don't care, I'm gonna use it anyway. So yeah, do the YouTube-y stuff and of course, share with a friend. After all, sharing is caring, right? As always, thank you so much for watching. And remember, to thine own self be true. Until next time, farewell. The worlds that we've explored in PSO2 have certainly had their share of mysteries. Once again, unlocalized companion content holds the key to the secrets of one of these worlds. Uncovering those secrets is all part of what we do here, all in the name of providing you, the viewer, with a richer PSO2 experience. My name's Zeo, and I'll be your lore keeper. Today, we're going to the desert planet of Lilybud, home to stray robots, furry rabbit people, and violent sandstorms that are visible from outer space. Shattered remnants of a once advanced civilization are strewn about the planet's surface. What secrets do they hold? Lilliput was first discovered in AP90, but the research team that was deployed there was attacked by the stray automata. The expedition still proved to be a major boon though. Underneath the planet existed abundant amounts of natural resources, so Oracle established a number of mining bases to collect these minerals. Of course, these bases are a prime target for hordes of Falspawn who seek to recover a part of their leader, Apprentice. The only indigenous life forms here are these little guys. They're short, stubby fur balls with rabbit-like ears, legally distinct Ewoks. But the Ewoks have more of a teddy bear-like appearance, whereas the Lillipins have a decidedly softer appearance with larger heads and rabbit ears. This game sure does like to do that. Legally distinct Keyblades, legally distinct Kirito swords. So many people had their own Kirito cosplays for years before the official collaboration.
That was great. Yeah, I noticed that there was a lot of adjacent anime-looking shit there.
But I digress. They're intelligent, albeit somewhat primitive, and they know their way around the machinery on their homeworld. They make their homes in the abandoned mines throughout the planet's surface. They can't speak the same language as Arcs, so they communicate with squeaks, gestures, and hieroglyphics. But what are the origins of our furry friends? How did these robots get here? For these answers, we once again defer to PSO2S. Season 3 of PSO2S introduces us to a race called the Erzimaroots. Once again, you might have seen this in an AC scratch on PSO2 Global. Yeah, here we go again with the missing content. Long ago, the Erzimaroots lived on the planet Carnabade. But like many other planets, they fell prey to a Darkfalls who killed around 4 billion people. The survivors fled to a space station orbiting the planet. They were strapped for resources though and needed to figure out a way to sustain themselves. So they uploaded themselves into android bodies called Darkniks. Unlike most things in the Oracle universe that are powered by photons, these guys are fueled by F-Factor. Eventually they would go on to colonize Lilliput. Turns out that our furry friends weren't native to this world after all. Season 3 also introduces us to an Erzimaroot named Oktar and a Lillipin by the name of Lean. Lean has the distinction of being the only talking Lillipin. Well, not quite, since Lean only seems to have that ability whenever Oktar's around. Season 3 chronicles their quest to rid their homeworld of the Darkfalls that took up residence there once and for all. So all the robots and factories you see on the planet are the handiwork of the Erzimaroots. Truth be told, I think the Erzimaroot story should have been episode 4, even though I did enjoy the one that we did get. It fits in with the world building established in the first 3 episodes. So that's all I have for you today. Before you get on with the rest of your day, I'd like to ask you to do the usual YouTubey stuff. Probably not a word, but whatever. So yeah, do the YouTubey stuff that helps get this out in front of more people. I also stream on Twitch, so drop by and hang out sometime. Have a couple drinks. As always, thank you so much for watching. And remember, to thine own self be true. Until next time, farewell.
世界よ聞きなさい。我が名は対の女神シバ。
The sins of the Photoners made manifest and visited upon their descendants. Like always, the goal here is to provide you, the viewer, with a richer experience by exploring the things that make the PSO2 universe what it is. My name's Zeo, and I'll be your lore keeper. Today, we're talking about Shiva, the self-proclaimed goddess of annihilation. As always, we like to give a shout out to the fine folks who give life to these characters through their voices. In the Japanese version, Shiva is voiced by Megumi Han. Fans of Guilty Gear know her as the voice of Ramathal Valentine. In the English dub, she's voiced by Faye Mata, who also lends her voice to Aqua from Konosuba. Shiva is a Hindu god along with Brahma and Vishnu. Shiva is the god of destruction, whereas Brahma and Vishnu represent creation and preservation. Before we get started, let me make one thing abundantly clear. There will be some late episode 5 and episode 6 spoilers here. Those wishing to experience things organically should turn back now. We return home from our trip to Omega, having closed up the black hole that threatened the universe. The black hole near Earth had also gone away. The universe was saved. Or so we thought. No sooner do we leave the bridge, we encounter a familiar face from Omega. What's he doing here? And who's this master of his? At the shopping plaza, we see a strange woman reading a book.
Gonna pause for a bit. I think I'm gonna be done playing PSO2, but I'll probably continue streaming. I'm just gonna be AFK for a bit.